The sight before He Yuan's eyes made him extremely furious. To begin with, they had already suffered a setback in the previous battle. The treacherous humans suddenly mobilized a lot of soldiers to come over and help, which caught them off guard. Now, there wasn't even a single 8th Order Open Heaven Realm Master in this squad, but they had managed to kill so many of the Black Ink clansmen. Certainly, He Yuan would never tolerate this. When did the Black Ink clan become so weak? He was already in a terrible mood, and now he was practically fuming. The feudal lord said in a shaking voice, "Sir, one of the 7th Order humans is unbelievably strong." He Yuan remained silent. In fact, he had already noticed this. The 3 7th Order humans were the core of this squad, and while 2 of them were quite normal, displaying what would be expected from 7th Order humans, the spear-holding young man was distinct as he was able to easily wipe out any Black Ink clansman that came near him. The extent of his strength was inconceivable. While gazing at the spear-holding young man with narrowed eyes, He Yuan was astounded. It was no wonder that the humans had the guts to intercept them here, for they had this young man with them. However, such a young man was still too weak in front of a territory lord. He Yuan snorted, "Pass on my orders. Kill them all regardless of what it takes." The feudal lord replied, "Yes." Without stopping, the large ship continued to inch closer to the battlefield. Following He Yuan's order, the already intense battle became even more violent. Initially, after Yang Kai killed some reckless feudal lords, the remaining hidden feudal lords didn't dare to make a rash move again. They remained hidden and waited for better opportunities to strike. Nevertheless, following He Yuan's order, these feudal lords wouldn't dare to delay despite their fear. They all started moving at once. In an instant, Yang Kai and the others felt tremendously pressured, and Su Linggong and the 7th Order Vice Squad leader were injured by some feudal lords in a moment of carelessness. On such a battlefield, even the slightest injury could be fatal, for the Black Ink strength permeating this place was highly corrosive. As time passed, even if their injuries didn't worsen, they would still turn into Black Ink disciples as they were no longer able to resist the Black Ink strength. Presently, Yang Kai's left eye had turned golden while his right eye was completely black. In the darkness, he saw a feudal lord coming at him from the side. The feudal lord came at the worst possible moment as Yang Kai had just used a powerful attack and had yet to regain his balance. If nothing unexpected happened, this sneak attack would be successful. However, the figure that Yang Kai was seeing through his black eye contorted in a weird manner all of a sudden. As if struck by lightning, the ferocious-looking feudal lord felt like a blade had cut across his waist. An excruciating pain spread from out, which delayed his sneak attack. It was because of this momentary delay that he lost his life. The azure dragon spear bluntly jabbed into the feudal lord's head as easily as if it were tofu. As world force surged, the bulky head exploded as dark blood started spurting from the neck of the headless corpse. Right then, a golden crow was heard cawing as a great sun leapt into existence and crashed into the Black Ink clansmen. Wherever the dazzling light covered, the Black Ink clan instantly lost their lives. Several feudal lords were killed by Yang Kai in just 10 breaths of time. However, there didn't seem to be an end to this torrent as the Black Ink clan continued charging towards him. The battle didn't seem to be stopping anytime soon. On this battlefield, Yang Kai was like a sheep that was surrounded by a pride of lions. Regardless of how hard he tried to resist, he was fated to be eaten alive. Su Linggong felt his heart sinking. While battling against the enemies, he caught sight of a large ship that had come to a halt not far away from them. This was a flight-type artifact that the Black Ink disciples had specifically refined for the Black Ink clan. In such an environment, only the territory lords had the right to ride such a flight-type artifact. Their target might very well be on this ship, and Su Linggong could feel that someone strong was paying attention to them with a pair of gloomy eyes. According to their plan, as long as Yang Kai came across that territory lord and got captured, their objective would be achieved. Unfortunately, the territory lord didn't seem to have the intention of showing up. Judging from the fierce reaction of these Black Ink clansmen, Su Linggong reckoned that the territory lord must have given the order to kill them ruthlessly. In that case, how were they supposed to achieve their goal? It wasn't like Yang Kai could simply go ahead and request to be a Black Ink disciple. That would be a foolish thing to do. It seemed that this territory lord had become bloodthirsty after the previous battle. Hence, whenever he saw humans, he just wanted to kill them all instead of turning them into black ink disciples. This was giving Su Linggong a headache. However, things had come to such a point where he could only grit his teeth and soldier on. A moment later, more feudal lords were killed. On the deck, He Yuan sported an extremely gloomy expression. This couldn't be helped, as the feudal lord he had sent to pass on his order was killed right in front of him. The extent of the spear-holding young man's power was inconceivable, which made He Yuan determined to end his life. This young man was only in the seventh order open heaven realm now. When he grew to be powerful enough one day, even He Yuan wouldn't be a match for him. At the thought of this, he turned to look to the side. There was an injured feudal lord who was just standing beside him, and the instant their eyes met, the feudal lord knew that He Yuan wanted him to join the battle as well. At that moment he was terrified. Presently he was badly wounded, so he wouldn't be of much help if he did join the battle. Even if he was still at the peak of his power though, he still wouldn't be a match for the spear-wielding young man. It was clear that this human could chop up a feudal lord as easily as one would chop fruits and vegetables. The feudal lord quickly racked his brain to come up with a solution, and before He Yuan could say anything, the feudal lord cupped his fist. "Sir, this seventh-order human is indeed significantly more powerful than the others in the same order. If you can capture him, he will be of great service to you." He Yuan frowned and fell silent when those words were spoken. In fact, he had thought about turning the seventh-order humans here into black ink disciples. However, he was horribly injured right now, so it was difficult for him to make a move. Certainly, he would be more than happy if these feudal lords were able to corrupt them with black ink strength. By then, he could just give an order, and these feudal lords wouldn't dare to keep the black ink disciples to themselves. Nevertheless, these feudal lords were too timid in front of the young man, so they wouldn't stand a chance to corrupt him. That was the reason he decided to kill the young man. Still, He Yuan became increasingly tempted as the spear-holding young man was indeed an extraordinary cultivator. After corrupting such a seventh-order open heaven realm master, he could start nurturing him, and by the time this black ink disciple ascended to the eighth order or even the ninth order, He Yuan would have the right to stand on equal footing with the royal lords. Having said that, it wasn't easy to corrupt a seventh-order open heaven realm master with black ink strength. Most humans didn't seem to fear death at all, and there had been countless precedents where the humans would rather commit suicide than become black ink disciples. If he decided to make a move, he had to achieve his goal in one swift strike. Otherwise, the young man would definitely launch a desperate counterattack. If he was still at the peak of his power, dealing with a seventh-order human would be a trivial matter. However, since he was wounded now, He Yuan had to be more cautious. Therefore, if he wanted to turn this young man, he had to weaken him first in order to achieve his goal. Just then, the feudal lord exclaimed in a pleasantly surprised tone, "Sir, that human has been invaded by black ink strength." He Yuan looked over and saw that the young man's face was indeed covered in a thin black aura, which was obviously black ink strength. He Yuan was naturally familiar with this sight. After giving it a thought, he realized that it wasn't surprising. Regardless of how powerful a seventh-order human was, he couldn't possibly resist black ink strength forever. If nothing unexpected happened, this young man would have to give up a portion of his small universe in order to save himself soon. This kind of situation was commonly seen on the battlefields. Whenever the humans were corrupted, they would rather damage their own foundations than degenerate into black ink disciples. He Yuan was already used to this, but he was pleased to see this moment. When the young man's foundation was damaged, it would be much easier to corrupt him. Humans could give up a small part of their small universe once or twice, but they couldn't possibly keep doing it endlessly. However, what happened next was vastly different from what He Yuan had imagined. On the battlefield, the young man fished out some kind of spirit pill and stuffed it into his mouth. After a short moment, the dark aura around the young man's face dissipated. He Yuan widened his eyes in disbelief. What did he just eat? The feudal lord was unable to reply to him as he had no idea what had happened either. What the hell did he just eat? He Yuan roared. The young man had shown signs of being corrupted, but he resolved that crisis by consuming a spirit pill. In other words, the humans had developed a method to resist black ink strength. In fact, the Black Ink clan already had some speculations about this. That was because they hadn't managed to turn any humans into Black Ink disciples since more than 10 years ago. However, that remained a speculation that couldn't be verified. Now, He Yuan saw it with his own eyes. In that case, the thing that the humans relied on to deal with Black Ink strength was a kind of spirit pill. What kind of pill would have such an effect? He Yuan was deathly curious about this and was determined to get to the bottom of it. If he could figure out the secret, it would be a huge merit that would more than offset the fact that he had lost the previous battle. On the battlefield, Su Linggong seized the chance and secretly spoke to Yang Kai via divine sense. "Brat, what are you doing?" He was fully aware of Yang Kai's situation. This guy had a world spring, so he could never be corrupted by Black Ink strength. However, he pretended to be invaded by Black Ink strength and consumed a spirit pill to put on an act. Since Su Linggong was literally standing beside Yang Kai, he saw that it was just an ordinary open heaven pill, not a purifying Black Ink pill. Yang Kai swept his spear across the Black Ink clansmen in front of him and killed them all. While catching his breath, he replied, "Since we're putting on an act, it has to be convincing. This territory lord is a patient one, so we have to tempt him to show up." A speechless Su Linggong decided to stop talking and focused on killing the enemies. The territory lord hadn't shown up despite being nearby, which suggested that he was badly injured and was thus acting more cautious in every decision he made. Su Linggong became a bit more at ease at the thought of this. A wounded territory lord would naturally be less intimidating to them. The intense battle continued, but it wasn't long before Su Linggong appeared exhausted as he secretly spoke to Yang Kai. "I'm running out of energy." A seventh-order master was unable to bear the intensity of such a battle over a long time. Even though half of the pressure was borne by Yang Kai, Su Linggong and his seventh-order vice squad leader still found it difficult to deal with these enemies. It had come to a point where all three of them were wounded. Worse, as more Black Ink clansmen were killed, the Black Ink strength on the battlefield became increasingly ample. Su Linggong and his vice squad leader were no longer able to keep resisting the Black Ink strength. Black Qi had begun appearing around their faces. "Both of you retreat to the warship. We'll have to fight our way out of here," Yang Kai shouted. "We're going to fight our way out?" Su Linggong was astounded upon hearing that. If they really did that at this point, all their efforts would go to waste. However, he soon realized Yang Kai's intention. He nodded and sent a signal to the vice squad leader, and then the two of them returned to the warship. The current situation was vastly different from their original plan. With that said, it was to be expected. Regardless of how immaculate a plan was, there would be unexpected incidents when they went to carry it out. Only by reacting accordingly would they stand a chance to succeed. It was the best idea to fight their way out of here at this point. As for how the situation would unfold, that was beyond their control. Even if they couldn't achieve their goal this time, there was nothing they could do about it. They could only come up with a new plan. The next moment, Yang Kai turned to look in a different direction and led the way for them. As he was followed by the warship, they tried to fight their way out of this battlefield that was covered with corpses. On the Black Ink clan's flight-type artifact, He Yuan narrowed his eyes and snarled, "Trying to flee? Dream on. Stop them at all costs." "Yes." Upon receiving the order, the feudal lord hurriedly left to pass down the order. The Black Ink clansmen did their best to stop the humans from running away, causing the battle to further intensify. He Yuan paid close attention to the battlefield. He could see that the spear-wielding young man had been invaded by Black Ink strength again, but this time he didn't consume any spirit pills. Instead, he clenched his teeth and persevered. As time passed, the Black Ink strength around him became increasingly richer. It seemed that the spirit pills were extremely rare. The young man probably only had one with him. Finally, some good news. He Yuan relaxed slightly. If those spirit pills were easily made and widely available, every human could bring several of them with them. In that case, life would become difficult for the Black Ink clan. Seeing that the warship led by the young man was about to break through the siege, He Yuan snorted and stomped his foot on the deck. In an instant, the Territory Lord's immense pressure reached out, forming into an invisible force and clashed with the young man's spear. The next moment, the seemingly unstoppable young man froze for an instant. While he was in a dazed state, a nearby feudal lord seized the chance and landed a punch on his chest, which caused him to spray out a mouthful of blood. A Territory Lord? The young man appeared horrified as he turned to look at the large ship. As their eyes met, one of them sported a solemn expression while mockery was written all over the other one's face. The young man appeared surprised, as though he had never expected to come across a Territory Lord here. The next moment he yelled, "All of you, leave now. I'll bring up the rear." Aboard the warship, Su Linggong was finally able to put down his worries. Even though the Territory Lord didn't show up in person when he made a move, it showed that he was no longer able to sit back and do nothing. In that case, they had partially achieved their goal and their task ended here. It then depended on luck whether Yang Kai would succeed. Therefore, without hesitation, Su Linggong sported a sorrowful expression and yelled, "Let's go!" The warship started glowing up as the defensive and propulsion arrays were activated to the fullest, sending the warship charging forward. Just a moment later, the defensive array on the warship dimmed. Following that, some of the propulsion arrays stopped working as the warship slowed down. With that said, they had finally broken through the siege after paying a hefty price. Without the defensive array, the warship had become far less intimidating. After all, the Fifth Order and Sixth Order Open Heaven Realm Masters aboard the warship were unable to resist black ink strength for a long time. The instant they got out of the encirclement, they launched some attacks from the warship on the Black Ink clansmen that were chasing after them. Although many of them were instantly injured or killed, it wouldn't change the overall situation. "Go!" Yang Kai roared as he wielded his spear, which turned into innumerable shadows and cut many Black Ink clansmen to pieces. On the warship, Su Linggong appeared mournful. After a short moment of hesitation, he gave the order to withdraw from the battlefield. Despite being soaked in blood, Yang Kai resolutely stood in the void with his spear in hand. With determination written all over his face, he blocked the Black Ink clansmen from pursuing the warship. Aboard the large ship, He Yuan narrowed his eyes. "I really don't understand. Are the humans foolish or courageous?" He had seen on the battlefield many times that a powerful cultivator would bring up the rear so that the weaker ones could flee. Therefore, he wasn't surprised when he saw what was going on, as it was within his expectations. However, regardless of how many times he witnessed it, he still didn't understand why the humans would act this way. All the humans seemed willing to sacrifice themselves, but didn't they know that a powerful master was significantly more valuable than a bunch of weaker ones? Just then, the feudal lord beside him asked, "Sir, do we pursue the enemy warship?" He Yuan took a glance at the fleeing warship, then shook his head. "There's no need for that. With this young man around, those useless dregs wouldn't be able to break through his blockade for some time. Moreover, this person is the most valuable. It would suffice as long as we can capture him." Upon hearing that, the feudal lord secretly let out a sigh of relief. He was worried that the Territory Lord would tell him to keep pursuing them. Meanwhile, Su Linggong's squad soon arrived at a safe place. When they turned their heads, they realized that there wasn't even a single Black Ink clansman in sight. Presently, all the squad members were panting for breath. They had to exert themselves as the battle was truly intense. In fact, up until this moment, they still hadn't figured out how a small squad like them had managed to persevere for such a long time when facing the tide of Black Ink clansmen. They were fully aware of their squad's strength. In the past, they would have been destroyed after just an hour of such combat. Nevertheless, not only had they fought against the Black Ink clansmen for half a day this time, but they had also escaped unscathed. Even though the warship was tattered, the squad members didn't suffer from any serious injuries. As for the damage to the warship, that could be repaired by spending some military merits when they returned to the inner sanctum. All of this was made possible because of Yang Kai. Qing Kuei gazed at Su Linggong and asked in a grim voice, "Honored master, are we really leaving Yang Kai behind?" Although the squad members were directly involved in this plan, only Su Linggong was aware of the details and objectives. The Seventh Order Vice Squad leader had some speculations, but he couldn't verify them. Qin Kuei had no idea what the plan was. After all, this was top secret, so it would be best to let fewer people know about it. Presently, Qin Kuei felt extremely apprehensive as the squad had escaped while Yang Kai brought up the rear for them. He had the urge to go back and stand by Yang Kai's side. Being killed on the battlefield would be much better than waiting here. What do you intend to do? Su Ling Gong sported a dark expression. Qin Kuei appeared hesitant as he had no idea what to say, but a moment later, he said resolutely, "Honored Master, please allow me to go back and assist Yang Kai." Besides him, the other squad members sported the same kind of expression. "You want to go back and get killed?" Su Ling Gong glared at him. "You're just a sixth-order brat. What can you do even if you go back? You'll only become a burden to him." Qin Kuei clenched his teeth. Just when he was ready to speak, Suing Shui suddenly pulled his sleeve and said in a small voice, "Senior brother, stop. Have you forgotten about a particular ability he possesses?" With a frown, Qin Kuei soon realized she was talking about the fact that Yang Kai was a master of the Tao of space. Therefore, Yang Kai was extremely adept at fleeing. Even if he was unable to deal with so many Black Ink clansmen, he could easily escape. Qin Kuei supposed that was the reason Yang Kai decided to bring up the rear. All of a sudden, the 7th Order Vice Squad leader said, "Qin Kuei, do not act on a whim. Your honored master and I are unable to persevere any longer. We have to return to the inner sanctum as soon as possible." Qin Kuei was shocked upon hearing that. It wasn't until this moment that he realized the faces of his honored master and the deputy squad leader were tinged with some Black Ink strength. It was apparent that they were being corrupted by it. Despite being 7th Order Open Heaven Realm Masters, they had been contaminated by Black Ink strength from a protracted battle with the Black Ink clan. Moreover, there was only one squad here. Presently, the two 7th Order Open Heaven Realm Masters had to divert most of their attention to suppress the Black Ink strength. They wouldn't fall into danger immediately. Nevertheless, if this dragged on, their small universes would be completely eroded by Black Ink strength. By then, they would turn into Black Ink disciples. Su Ling Gong ordered in an authoritative tone. "Listen up. Head back to the inner sanctum as soon as possible. We must not delay." Despite being unresigned, these Open Heaven Realm Masters wouldn't dare to disobey the squad leader's order. A moment later, huge arrays started appearing beneath everyone's feet. As a light flickered, they disappeared at the same time. It was obvious that they had used the universe transference law and returned to Inyang Pass. After all of the members were gone, the vice squad leader nodded at Su Ling Gong. "I'll be waiting for you in the inner sanctum, squad leader." Upon finishing his words, he activated the universe transference law as well. Su Ling Gong nodded and watched him leave. Then, he turned to look in the direction where they came from and let out a sigh. After transferring the tattered warship to his small universe, he too activated the universe transference law. On the battlefield, Yang Kai fell into a perilous state without the warship support and was surrounded by a large number of Black Ink clansmen once again. Despite being terrified, the Black Ink clansmen had no choice but to charge forward following the territory lord's order. Fortunately, Yang Kai didn't seem able to persevere any longer. Otherwise, they wouldn't have the confidence to keep fighting. An incense stick after the warship left the battlefield. An asteroid that looked like a universe fragment abruptly appeared on the battlefield. The asteroid was covered with Black Ink strength, and the instant it appeared, the world force around it dissipated. At the same time, Yang Kai, whose aura was already unstable, significantly weakened. The feudal lord's eyes brightened when he saw what was going on from the large ship. He said in a pleasantly surprised tone, "Sir, that guy can't hold on any longer. He's starting to give up parts of his small universe." After years of conflict, both races were fully aware of each other's patterns of behavior. On the battlefield, it wasn't rare to see an Open Heaven Realm Master giving up a part of his small universe after he was invaded by Black Ink strength. Therefore, after every major battle, there would be a lot of asteroids floating around the battlefield. Those were the territories that the humans had cut off from their small universes. When a human did this, it suggested that they were already on their last legs. In fact, this action wasn't really useful. Even though he could spare himself the fate of being invaded by black ink strength, his foundation would be damaged, thus causing his strength to plunge. This way, he would only get killed much quicker on the chaotic battlefield. Or, it would be easier for the Black Ink clan to corrupt him again. Xianxia had showcased an incredible power as countless Black Ink clansmen were killed by him, so it was apparent that he was no ordinary Seventh Order master. It wasn't until he gave up a part of his small universe that the Black Ink clansmen were relieved. This human wasn't invincible. He could be defeated or even killed. Back then, when Xianxia decided to give up his World Spring in Blue Sky Pass, he cut off a small part of his small universe to do so. He still clearly remembered the excruciating pain he had gone through as though the incident had happened just yesterday. At this moment, he wouldn't have done such a thing if he still had a choice. However, he had to act like a normal Seventh Order human. Regardless of how powerful a Seventh Order Open Heaven Realm Master was, he couldn't possibly resist the Black Ink strength after fighting against the Black Ink clansmen for such a long time. Therefore, he had to show them that he had to take a spirit pill, and presently, he also had to sacrifice a small part of his small universe. He was doing all this because he wanted to carry out his plan without arousing anyone's suspicion. Fortunately, he had a World Tree clone with him now. Even though he had sacrificed a small part of his small universe, the clone would help him repair the missing part over time. He wouldn't have to worry about his foundation being permanently damaged. As he cut off a part of his small universe, Xianxia was overwhelmed by a sense of excruciating pain once again. This caused him to tremble and growl like a beast. In an instant, countless attacks were directed at him. Upon impact, he almost lost his balance as blood spurted from his wounds. The missing part of his small universe caused his strength to plunge. Earlier, he had showcased a power that was much greater than that of the average Seventh Order Open Heaven Realm Master. But now, he was just like any other cultivator in the same order. Given his cultivation, could he save himself in such a hostile environment? The Black Ink clansmen around him had undoubtedly noticed this. Emboldened, they started launching violent attacks on him. At that instant, things could not have been worse for Xianxia. 1 hour later, his face was covered with Black Ink strength once again, making it seem like his small universe was eroded by Black Ink strength for the second time. He Yuan was watching silently from the ship. At this moment, he couldn't help but praise. He's indeed a resolute person. However, this spear-holding young man had done that twice in a short time. It must have taken him a lot of courage and grit to do so. This human was not only ruthless to the Black Ink clan, but also to himself. "Sir, why don't I go capture him?" The feudal lord, who had not dared to join the battle earlier, suddenly made such a request. This couldn't be helped, as Xianxia's aura plunged after he gave up a part of his small universe twice. He was almost unable to remain in the Seventh Order. If he did that one more time, he would probably regress to the Sixth Order. The feudal lord wouldn't dare to make a move when he saw how intimidating Xianxia was just now. But now that Xianxia was at the end of his rope, the feudal lord was certainly not afraid of him. If he could capture this human, he would make a big contribution in front of the territory lord. Nevertheless, He Yuan snorted. "Who do you think you are to do that?" The horrified feudal lord instantly fell silent. Even though he had no idea what the territory lord's intention was, he reckoned that the latter was interested in this human. The territory lord would most likely turn this human into a Black Ink disciple. Otherwise, he wouldn't have stopped and waited here for so long. On the battlefield, Xianxia was battered and his hair hung loose over his shoulders. This wasn't an act. He really was running out of energy. Despite having the World Trees clone, he suffered tremendous damage after giving up a part of his small universe twice. The prolonged fight also exacerbated his wounds. Presently, the world force in his small universe was almost completely depleted. However, the Black Ink clansman he had been waiting for still hadn't shown up. Even though he had no idea who the territory lord on the large ship was, he knew that the latter was paying close attention to the battlefield. Nevertheless, the territory lord still didn't seem to have the intention of making a move. The fact that he was so cautious suggested that he was badly injured. He wouldn't rashly make a move unless he was confident that he could achieve his goal with one strike. In that case, Xianxia had no choice but to lend him a hand. Upon making up his mind, Xianxia fiercely swept his spear across the black ink clansmen around him to drive them back. While he was holding his spear, his aura started rising rapidly. He was imposing as he glared at the enemies around him. Not knowing what was going on, these black ink clansmen wouldn't dare to move forward. Disdain was written all over Xianxia's face as he sneered, "How dare you trash violate my human race's dignity?" Then he shouted, "Long live the humans!" Even though his aura had already reached its former peak, it continued to rise. With a resolute expression, he seemed determined to die. When the feudal lord, who was standing beside He Yuan on the large ship, saw that, his expression changed as he shouted, "Sir, he's going to kill himself." On the battlefield, it was common for human cultivators to kill themselves in order to avoid being turned into black ink disciples. There were always such people in every major battle. Therefore, the moment the feudal lord saw what Xianxia was doing, he realized his intentions. The spear-holding young man was trapped in a dead end. He had given up a part of his small universe twice, so he was at risk of falling back into the Sixth Order. Moreover, surrounded by a sea of black ink clansmen, he would never be able to flee. Other than killing himself, there was nothing he could do. As soon as the feudal lord finished speaking, he turned to look at He Yuan, but the latter was already nowhere in sight. He had no idea when the territory lord disappeared. The feudal lord quickly looked back at the battlefield, where he saw the territory lord's figure. He Yuan had abruptly appeared in front of the young man as he hovered his hand above the latter's head. At this moment, Xianxia's aura had already reached an unstable state, and the illusory phantom of his small universe faintly appeared behind him. The moment he detected the territory lord's aura, a glint flashed through his eyes as he thrust out his azure dragon spear. He Yuan effortlessly slapped the spear aside, and the hand he extended first firmly came into contact with Xianxia's head. Upon impact, Xianxia was overwhelmed with a sense of dizziness. He Yuan was indeed badly injured, but Xianxia was not in any better shape. The aura he had just accumulated dissipated following the blow to his head. The next instant, a torrent of black ink strength streamed out of He Yuan's hand as it turned into a black ink cloud that engulfed the two of them. The black ink clansmen were unable to see what was going on, but they could hear the human growling furiously, "In your dreams!" Following a brief exchange of moves, the place fell into silence. When the black ink cloud dissipated a moment later, the figures of Xianxia and He Yuan were revealed. He Yuan's aura was slightly unstable while Xianxia was soaked in blood, looking all battered, his spear still pointing forward. Soon, though, he put the spear away and cupped his fist before calling out in a respectful manner, "Master!" Upon hearing that, the black ink clansmen around them were evidently relieved. There was no doubt that the territory lord had successfully turned this human into a black ink disciple. From now on, he wasn't just a human but also the territory lord's servant. He Yuan nodded gently and examined Xianxia. He was apparently pleased to be able to subdue him. "Come with me," He Yuan said, then flew towards the large ship. Xianxia coughed before following him. Upon boarding the large ship, he saw a feudal lord coming over. "Congratulations on subduing this human, sir. I'm sure he'll be a capable aid to you in the future." He Yuan ordered impassively, "I'll get some rest. Take care of him and make sure that no one oppresses him." Upon hearing that, the feudal lord was surprised, thinking that the territory lord truly treasured this human. Otherwise, he wouldn't have given such an order. After all, black ink disciples were the lowest of beings among the black ink clan. However, He Yuan had a good reason for valuing him, for this human had showcased incredible power. This person was no ordinary Seventh Order Open Heaven Realm Master. After He Yuan finished speaking, he strode into the cabin. Meanwhile, the feudal lord looked smilingly at Xianxia. With a dispassionate expression, Xianxia looked around. There were quite a number of feudal lords on the ship. However, they were all looking at him with hostile expressions. Just now, they had seen Xianxia slaughtering their clansmen. Although they didn't intend to avenge their deaths, they were instinctively resentful of humans as the blood feud between the two races had been ongoing for countless years. Despite the fact that Yang Kai had turned into a black ink disciple, they were still displeased. Nevertheless, having just heard He Yuan's orders, none of these feudal lords would dare to make things difficult for him. Other than these feudal lords, there were also a lot of injured high-rank black ink clansmen who were recuperating on the deck. Yang Kai even detected the auras of other territory lords from the inner part of the ship, which made him feel flabbergasted. Fortunately, even though there had been some hitches, he had eventually achieved his goal. He had sacrificed a lot by giving up a part of his small universe twice, but he had successfully become the black ink disciple of a territory lord. However, there was something he had to ascertain first. Was the territory lord who had stopped him from committing suicide and corrupted him with black ink strength the He Yuan that those from Inyang Pass had chosen for him? Those from Inyang Pass had selected He Yuan because he was highly valued by Mu Guang royal lord, and he was also one of the most powerful territory lords. More importantly, he would frequently visit the royal city, so it would be easier for Yang Kai to gather information. However, Yang Kai had no idea what He Yuan looked like, nor was he aware of what those from Inyang Pass would do to make sure that it would be He Yuan who would turn him. To find out about it, he had no choice but to ask around. At the thought of this, he turned to look at the feudal lord beside him and cupped his fist. "How should I address you, sir?" The feudal lord was injured when he was in the resource harvesting area previously, but upon hearing that, he replied with a smile, "My name is Xiagu. Just call me Xiagu." Yang Kai nodded gently. "So, it is Sir Xiagu." Xiagu was evidently pleased with the honorary title as he put on a brighter smile. He patted Yang Kai's shoulder with his big hand in a passionate manner. "Don't be overly polite with me. Since both of us are working for Sir, you can just tell me if you need help in the future." "Many thanks." Yang Kai expressed his gratitude, then brought up the main topic. "What is our Sir's name?" With a solemn expression, Xiagu replied, "Sir is named He Yuan in the clan. He's one of the top 5 territory lords working for the royal lord. So, consider yourself lucky that you've submitted to Sir." "It's really He Yuan." Yang Kai set his mind at ease. It seemed that everything was going to plan. Xiagu let out a sigh and turned to look at the cabin. Other than Sir He Yuan, the other Sirs who are in charge of this region have been knocked out by the humans. When we return, Sir He Yuan will most likely be reprimanded by the royal lord. Then, he placated Yang Kai by saying, "Having said that, our Sir has always been valued by the royal lord, so the punishment wouldn't be severe. He will be stripped of some of his territories at most. Forget it. Let's not talk about it. It seems that you can't hold on any longer. Find yourself a place and get some rest." Yang Kai thanked him again and sat down with his legs crossed on the deck. Then, he stuffed some spirit pills into his mouth and adjusted his breathing. He managed to figure out many things through his brief conversation with Xiagu. At the very least, he finally realized how those from Inyang Pass made sure that it would be He Yuan who would corrupt him. Other than He Yuan, the other territory lords were all knocked out by the human cultivators. Hence, only He Yuan was able to make a move. However, the humans must have paid a hefty price in order to achieve this result. To severely injure so many territory lords, the 8th Order Division commanders must have suffered serious injuries themselves. To the Black Ink clan, the best way to recuperate was to fall into a state of deep sleep, and they would recover quicker if they were able to rest inside a black ink nest. Presently, there were several territory lords on this large ship, and apart from the wounded He Yuan, the other territory lords were sound asleep. Yang Kai couldn't help but have the urge to secretly kill those territory lords. If he could destroy these territory lords here, the pressure they faced in the Inyang theater would lessen. Having said that, he had a more important task at hand, so he suppressed this urge. With He Yuan's large ship leading the way, the battered Black Ink clansmen headed to the Black Ink clan's territory. The outcome showed that the war was truly bloody. A moment later, a ray of light approached him from a distance and landed beside him. Wu Qing, who had arrived at this place first to investigate, asked, "How is it? Is there any news from the inner sanctum?" Tang Qiu, who came later, replied, I've just received some news. Yang Kai didn't return to the inner sanctum. Have you found anything here? The situation is just like what Su Ling Gong and his squad reported, but there's a notable discrepancy." "What do you mean?" Tang Qiu asked with a frown. Look over there. Wu Qing suddenly pointed in a particular direction. Tang Qiu looked intently in the same direction. Then his expression changed. Those look like universe fragments. That brat gave up parts of his small universe. Wu Qing nodded. Su Linggong and his squad told us that Yang Kai fell into a perilous situation, but they had no idea what happened next. Apparently, Yang Kai sacrificed some parts of his small universe after they were gone, which was why they didn't see it. With a solemn expression, Tang Qiu said, his foundation must have been damaged after he gave up some parts of his small universe. However, those from Blue Sky Pass told us that he has obtained a World Tree clone which replaced the World Spring he owned. With the clone's presence, not only is he immune to the corruption of black ink strength, but it can also apparently repair the missing parts of his small universe. Obviously, he did that in order to fool the Black Ink clan, so it could be considered a clever move. Now, it seems that everything was well under his control. If he were in danger, he wouldn't have sacrificed parts of his small universe to weaken himself. Wu Qing nodded. We can only hope that he has been subdued by He Yuan and become his Black Ink disciple. I was initially worried about this part of the plan as it had the most uncertainty, but his actions seem to have made up for it. Even though Wu Qing didn't point out what the cause of the uncertainty was, Tang Qiu was fully aware of it. In fact, the cause was glaring when they were devising the plan. However, there was nothing they could do about it, so they could only hope that Yang Kai would be lucky enough. Yes, I was worried about it as well. Even if he has successfully pretended to be corrupted, his secret will be exposed if He Yuan decides to examine his small universe. Yang Kai was only in the Sixth Order Open Heaven realm when he pretended to be a Black Ink disciple previously, and the person who corrupted him was just a high-rank Black Ink clansman. So it never crossed the latter's mind that Yang Kai had retained his sanity, so he never thought to examine his small universe. Moreover, the Black Ink clansman had always believed that the small universe of a Sixth Order Open Heaven realm master hadn't materialized, so there was no need to inspect it. Nevertheless, things were different now as Yang Kai was in the Seventh Order Open Heaven realm. If He Yuan suddenly had the urge to ask Yang Kai to open up his small universe to him, would the latter agree to it or would he be forced to flee? As soon as the small universe was opened, his secret would be exposed. With that said, there was only a slim chance that this might happen. After all, a territory lord had personally made a move on a Seventh Order human, so he probably wouldn't doubt whether he had succeeded. However, accidents happened when one least expected them to. Now though, during the intense battle, Yang Kai had even given up some parts of his small universe, which could effectively fool the Black Ink clan. After all, no human would want to go through the pain of cutting off parts of their small universe if there was any other choice. Could be said that Yang Kai's action landed him in a safer situation. Moreover, as far as the Black Ink clan was concerned, the four universe pillars had always been in the possession of the Eighth Order Open Heaven realm masters. Seventh Order humans didn't have the right to own these treasures that could ward off Black Ink strength. If nothing unexpected happened, He Yuan most likely wouldn't try to examine Yang Kai's small universe. Given his capabilities, even if something had gone wrong, he could have fled from He Yuan. Since he never returned to the inner sanctum, it means that he must have followed He Yuan to the Black Ink clan's territory. Tang Qiu let out a sigh. The only thing we can do now is go back and recuperate. As soon as he finds some useful information, there will be an epic battle to fight. The next moment, they activated the universe transference law and two grand arrays appeared beneath their feet. As a light flickered, they disappeared from the spots and returned to Inyang Pass. The Black Ink clan had successfully retreated. Along the way, some teams left the larger group and returned to their own places, but the large ship led by He Yuan was still heading towards the depths of the void. It wasn't certain where the ship was going. On the deck, Yang Kai silently adjusted his breathing and recuperated. He had exerted himself and even given up parts of his small universe in the previous battle. These losses couldn't be made up for in short order. It could be said that the heritage he had accumulated over the years was almost wiped out due to his actions. If he hadn't consumed a high-rank world fruit picked from the World Tree clone, his heritage would have plunged to when he just ascended to the Seventh Order. Even so, he had lost a few hundred years' worth of cultivation by giving up a part of his small universe twice. Black ink clansmen were seen recuperating on the deck. The ones who had the right to stay here were all feudal lords, so it was expected that they were not friendly to Yang Kai. However, considering the fact that He Yuan truly treasured Yang Kai, they wouldn't dare to make things difficult for him despite feeling displeased. Moreover, Zhagu was also seated beside Yang Kai as he was treating his wounds. A few days later, all of Yang Kai's flesh wounds had almost completely healed. However, the losses to his small universe couldn't be made up in a short time, especially the missing pieces. Even though he had the World Tree clone to help repair it, it would take him several years to fully recover. When Yang Kai was meditating one day, he suddenly heard He Yuan calling out to him. He quickly got to his feet and headed to the third floor of the large ship. As he followed the voice, he soon found He Yuan in a luxurious room. Although He Yuan still appeared pale, he had clearly restored some of his power. At that moment, he was seated on a large chair with his chin resting on his palm. He seemed to be lost in thought. "Master!" Yang Kai called out in a subservient manner. He Yuan didn't respond to him as he was still thinking about something. A while later, he took a deep breath and straightened up. "What's your name?" Yang Kai reported his name. He Yuan nodded gently. "Human names are so strange. In any case, I've asked you to come here because I have some questions for you. Please go ahead, master." Yang Kai remained respectful, which was expected of a black ink disciple. "You must be an important figure on the human side, right? I was just the squad leader of a squad." "You're just a squad leader?" He Yuan was surprised. "Given your strength, you could have held a more important position. According to the classification of the humans, you should be good enough to be the battalion commander." With a proud expression, Yang Kai replied, "There are no other 7th Order masters who are a match for me. However, I'm not well-versed in commanding soldiers. In previous battles, my conduct was somewhat reckless, so they only let me become a squad leader." Upon hearing his explanation, He Yuan said, "I see. It's no wonder that you had the guts to ambush so many Black Ink clansmen when you only had one squad with you. You were eager to earn merits, weren't you?" Yang Kai immediately played along by saying, "Please forgive me, master." Yang Kai was just replying to He Yuan's questions in a perfunctory manner, but it happened to cause the latter to have some misunderstandings. Certainly, he wouldn't try to correct him. "I saw you consuming a spirit pill in the previous battle to dispel the black ink strength." "Yes." Yang Kai nodded. He Yuan leaned forward. "What kind of spirit pill is that? Show me." Yang Kai appeared to be in a dilemma. "Master, the pill is called the purifying black ink pill, which was newly invented by the humans. Due to the difficulty in producing them, though, I was only given one pill. I consumed it on the battlefield, so there are none left." Purifying black ink pill. He Yuan felt his brow twitching. "When was it invented?" After appearing to give it a thought, Yang Kai replied, "About 20 years ago." He Yuan gritted his teeth. "It must be thanks to these purifying black ink pills that the humans have repeatedly fended off black ink strength. Is that why there have not been any new black ink disciples recently?" "Yes." "Damn." He Yuan was furious as he finally realized why there were no new black ink disciples over the past 20 years. They had speculated that the humans must have invented a way to defend against black ink strength, but they had no idea what it was. If he hadn't subdued this human named Yang Kai by chance, they still wouldn't have found out about it. After blowing his top for a moment, he asked, "How difficult is it to make these purifying black ink pills?" Since this was an important matter, He Yuan had to find out all the details possible and report them to the royal lord at a later time. Yang Kai replied respectfully, "I know nothing about alchemy, but I've heard some rumors that it is difficult to refine purifying black ink pills. Even the alchemy grandmasters wouldn't always succeed in producing them, so the success rate is fairly low. Usually, a squad would only be given one pill." He Yuan's expression turned milder. Yang Kai's statement verified what he had seen on the battlefield. There were a total of 3 7th Order Open Heaven Realm Masters in that squad. However, other than Yang Kai, who consumed a purifying black ink pill to dispel the black ink strength, the other 7th Order humans didn't take such pills even though they had been affected by black ink strength as well. After, they fled from the battlefield and disappeared. This was good news for the Black Ink clan, as every squad was only given a single purifying black ink pill. He Yuan was most worried that it would be easy to refine these pills and that all humans would be given several of them. If that were to happen, the Black Ink clan would suffer a huge setback if they were caught unprepared. As he set his mind at ease, he went on to ask, "Has the old ancestor from Inyang Pass recovered from her injuries?" Yang Kai was startled for a moment. He wouldn't have known that the old ancestor in Inyang Pass was injured if He Yuan hadn't asked. So how was he supposed to know the old ancestor's condition? Since the old ancestor was wounded, there was no way Mu Guang was in a better state. Yang Kai wondered when the two of them had fought against each other. He Yuan nodded. It has been about 100 years since the last Great War. Regardless of how badly wounded she was, she must have recovered by now. I'm worried that another large battle will break out again soon. It wasn't until this moment that Yang Kai found out it had been 100 years since the old ancestor of Inyang Pass was wounded. In other words, there was a grand battle in the Inyang Theater 100 years ago. Even the old ancestor and the royal lord had exchanged moves at that time. 100 years had passed in the blink of an eye, and both races had had enough time to recuperate, so war was now imminent. However, the big battle in the resource harvesting area just recently would probably delay the all-out war by several years. After all, several powerhouses from both the humans and Black Ink clan were injured. It would take them some time to restore their strength. Just then, a feudal lord entered the room. It was none other than Jia Gu, who cupped his fist and said, "Sir Territory Lord, we're about to arrive." He Yuan nodded and waved his hand at Yang Kai. "You can go back now." Yang Kai responded respectfully and left the cabin. Upon returning to the deck, he looked into the distance and saw a huge universe fragment. It was so large that it was comparable to a whole universe world. The universe fragment was covered with a layer of darkness, which went to show that Black Ink strength was abundant. By living in such an environment, the Black Ink clansmen would see their powers rising quickly. Yang Kai had lived in the Black Ink clan's domain for 2 years and followed the high-rank Black Ink clansmen he belonged to into many different areas. However, none of those places was comparable to this universe fragment. Yang Kai soon realized that this universe fragment was directly owned by He Yuan, and the areas occupied by his subordinate feudal lords would form the territory lord's territory. The large ship continued heading towards the universe fragment. As the ship passed through the clouds of Black Ink strength, it soon hovered above a large city. The city was so vast that there was no end in sight. In the center of the city was a gigantic Black Ink nest that looked like a flower bud that was about to blossom. The Black Ink nest seemed to be a living creature, and every time it breathed, a lot of Black Ink strength would be released. Yang Kai narrowed his eyes. Although he had seen a lot of Black Ink nests before, the one before his eyes was undoubtedly the largest. Given enough resources, such a Black Ink nest would be able to produce many Black Ink clan soldiers in no time. Black Ink nests had always been the foundation that the Black Ink clan relied on to survive. Black Ink clansmen were born from the Black Ink nests, and they also had to achieve breakthroughs inside the Black Ink nests. If the Black Ink nests were gone for good, the Black Ink clan would be like a tree without roots or a river without a source. For this reason, the humans always tried to destroy Black Ink nests so that they could cut the enemy off at its source. Nevertheless, it wasn't easy to carry out such plans. There was basically a Black Ink nest in every Black Ink clansman's territory. Zhu Feng even had a small Black Ink nest in his temporary hiding place. There wouldn't be enough humans to destroy all of these Black Ink nests, and it wouldn't be useful if they only destroyed a few of them, for the Black Ink clan could easily create new Black Ink nests. So far, the humans still hadn't figured out how the Black Ink nests were born. Some people speculated that they were built by the Black Ink clan, but this speculation was not logical because everyone who had seen a Black Ink nest knew that this thing seemed to have a life of its own. Nothing the humans had ever built was comparable to these Black Ink nests. There were also some people who speculated that the birth of Black Ink nests was just like growing flowers. With a seed planted in the ground, it would grow into a new Black Ink nest when it was well taken care of. If this speculation was right though, what kind of seed was that? Where did it come from? Obviously, no study could be conducted. Even the old ancestors were unable to figure out the secrets behind the Black Ink nests. Therefore, the humans cast this idea away. Whenever they came across any black ink nests, they would just destroy them. Regardless, demolishing black ink nests would mean immense losses for the Black Ink clan. The large ship directly landed in front of the gigantic black ink nest. Some Black Ink clansmen were already waiting for them. It was apparent that they had learned about He Yuan's return just now. Following Zha Gu's lead, Yang Kai leapt off the deck and stood to the side. The unfamiliar human attracted the attention of many Black Ink clansmen. However, there were already some Black Ink disciples who resided in this place. Although many Black Ink clansmen were curious, they soon looked away. He Yuan's figure appeared on the deck, but instead of leaving the ship, he waved his hand. As Black Ink's strength undulated, he shouted, "Wake up!" Following his shout, powerful beings inside the large ship's cabin started awakening. Yang Kai's expression changed as he realized that they were the territory lords who had been sound asleep in the large ship. Even though these auras were powerful, Yang Kai could feel that they were somewhat frail. It was obvious that they were all severely wounded. These territory lords hadn't recovered one bit following a long time of deep sleep. Therefore, He Yuan directly brought them to the Black Ink nest so that they could make use of its power to recuperate. A moment later, some burly figures stepped out of the cabin and stood on the deck. The Black Ink clansmen below saluted them respectfully. Yang Kai stole a glance and realized that these territory lords were all injured as they were soaked in blood. The most severely wounded one had half of his neck cut. Yang Kai wondered who the army commander was that had made such a ruthless move. Black blood was still leaking out of the wound on his neck, and there was a mysterious force around the wound that was stopping it from healing. This territory lord was especially unstable and seemed to be muddle-headed. It was as though he would soon lose his life if he wasn't given immediate treatment. Including He Yuan, there were a total of 6 territory lords on the large ship. The 5 territory lords who had just awakened nodded at He Yuan and silently dashed towards the Black Ink nest, soon disappearing. After they were gone, He Yuan swept a glance over the rest. "While I am recuperating, all the affairs in the territory will be handled by Gue Liao," one of the feudal lords, who had been waiting for He Yuan's return just now, bowed. Yes, there was no doubt that this feudal lord was Gue Liao. He Yuan then shuffled towards the Black Ink nest, but he soon stopped in his tracks and turned his head to speak to Gue Liao. "He's the new Black Ink disciple I've taken on. Get him a profound in-spirit fruit later." A hint of surprise flashed through Gue Liao's eyes as he turned to look at Yang Kai. In fact, he had caught sight of Yang Kai the moment the latter leapt off the deck, but he didn't pay much attention to him. After all, it wasn't rare for them to capture Black Ink disciples on the battlefields. However, what the territory lord had said suggested that he valued this Black Ink disciple highly. That was why Gue Liao was surprised. It had to be noted that most of the Black Ink disciples had suffered some damage in their small universes. So profound in-spirit fruits were needed in order to repair them. Even though the Black Ink clan had some reserves of profound in-spirit fruits, they were not rewards that could be given out easily. Only the Black Ink disciples who had made immense contributions on the battlefield and proved their worth had a chance to be rewarded with a profound in-spirit fruit by the Black Ink clan to repair their damaged small universes. However, Yang Kai had received this kind of treatment when he was just a newcomer, which was why feudal lords like Gue Liao were surprised. With that said, since He Yuan had given the order, Gue Liao naturally wouldn't object to it and bowed respectfully. He Yuan then stepped into the Black Ink nest. As he disappeared, the Black Ink nest automatically closed. Since the territory lords had to recuperate here, the Black Ink nest wouldn't reopen for a few years. In fact, the Black Ink clansmen previously cultivating in the Black Ink nest were all chased out in advance to make way for the territory lords so that they could derive enough energy to recuperate. After the territory lords entered the Black Ink nest, the feudal lords, who had returned alongside the large ship, dispersed. Soon, only Gue Liao, Zha Gu, and Yang Kai were left standing in front of the Black Ink nest. Gue Liao shot a meaningful glance at Yang Kai and asked, "What's your name?" Yang Kai cupped his fist. "Yang Kai greets Sir Gue Liao." Gue Liao nodded gently. "Come with me." He then turned to Zha Gu. "You too." Upon finishing his words, he led the way for them. Yang Kai followed him closely, despite not knowing what was going on. Zha Gu had no choice but to follow them as it was Gue Liao's order. Soon, they arrived at an exotic-looking castle that was in a prime location. It should be He Yuan's castle. There were many black ink clansmen who resided in this castle. Following Gue Liao, Yang Kai stepped inside and looked around curiously. Gue Liao called out to a black ink clansman and ordered, "He's the new black ink disciple that Sir Territory Lord has taken on. Help him settle in." The person was just a high-rank black ink clansman, and his weak aura suggested that he was only equivalent to a fifth-order open heaven realm master. This kind of black ink clansman only served as cannon fodder to exhaust the human cultivators on the battlefield, and they were not in a prestigious position within the black ink clan. Having said that, they were good enough to be servants in such a castle. Upon hearing that, the high-rank black ink clansman bent his back. Yes. He then turned to look at Yang Kai. "Come with me." Yang Kai cupped his fist at Gue Liao, then left the place with the high-rank black ink clansman. Gue Liao watched him leave in silence. It wasn't until Yang Kai was out of sight that he continued moving forward. A moment later, Gue Liao sat down on a large chair in a side hall. Then he fished out a world sphere which was full of world force from his space ring and sniffed at it. In an instant, he felt rejuvenated. Even though both of them were feudal lords, one obviously had higher status than the other. This couldn't be helped though, as Gue Liao was He Yuan's confidant. Otherwise, He Yuan wouldn't have said that Gue Liao would manage all the affairs while he was recuperating. Therefore, even though Zha Gu was standing in front of him while he was still wounded, he wouldn't dare to appear displeased. Gue Liao breathed in the world force from the world sphere before asking slowly, "Tell me, what's so special about that Yang Kai that Sir Territory Lord regards him so highly?" I knew he was going to ask about it. In fact, Zha Gu already had a speculation when Gue Liao told him to tag along, and it seemed that his speculation was right. After giving it a thought, he replied with a solemn expression, "He's very strong." Gue Liao narrowed his eyes. "Very strong? How strong?" Zha Gu went on to say, "After the Sirs were ambushed by the human army in the resource harvesting area, they were defeated and forced to retreat. That Yang Kai led a single human squad around the battlefield to ambush our clansmen as they were escaping. He single-handedly killed several thousand of our clansmen, including more than 10 feudal lords." Gue Liao initially appeared nonchalant, but his expression turned solemn when he heard that. He killed several thousand, including more than 10 feudal lords? Are you sure? Zha Gu put on a helpless smile. Sir Territory Lord was standing beside me as we watched it happen. It's because that person was so powerful that Sir Territory Lord wanted to subdue him despite the fact that he was badly injured. Gue Liao fell into a dazed state for a moment before saying, "Tell me everything you know in detail." Certainly, Zha Gu wouldn't dare to hide anything as he vividly narrated the battle on that day. Gue Liao could instantly imagine an epic fight unfolding before his eyes. That guy gave up a part of his small universe twice. In order to let his companions escape, he took the initiative to stay behind and halt our forces. In the end, when he realized that he was unable to escape, he decided to kill himself. Sir Territory Lord promptly made a move and captured him. Zha Gu felt the emotions in his heart undulating when he recalled what happened that day. He had a feeling that if Yang Kai hadn't intended to protect his allies, he could have easily fled, and the wounded He Yuan wouldn't have been able to turn him. At that time, He Yuan was worried that the human masters were still pursuing him, so he wouldn't have taken the risk of chasing after Yang Kai if the latter was determined to flee. The humans are still as foolish as ever. Gue Liao couldn't help but snort upon hearing that. Then he asked, "Who do you think will be the winner if he and I fight?" Zha Gu hurriedly replied, "Sir Gue Liao, you'll soon ascend to become a territory lord. Regardless of how powerful Yang Kai is, he wouldn't be a match for you." Gue Liao snorted as he was somewhat displeased at Zha Gu's prompt reply. Even though Zha Gu replied to him without hesitation, he didn't seem sincere. Nevertheless, Gue Liao didn't intend to harp on this issue. He tossed the world sphere, which was only left with half the original world force, at him and said, "Good. I can see that you're badly wounded. Go back and recuperate. After taking the world sphere, Zha Gu replied joyfully, Many thanks, sir. Since the black ink nest was closed due to the territory lords having to recuperate there, it would be hard for Zha Gu to treat his wounds as he was unable to make use of this territory's power. It would probably take him a longer time to recover. However, with the world force inside the world sphere, it would significantly reduce his recovery time. Although he could afford a world sphere as well, this thing was still expensive. After Zha Gu was gone, Gue Liao narrowed his eyes and tapped on the armrest. Following a moment of silence, he called out, Lu Ziyan. A figure emerged from the darkness and replied, Master. Gue Liao lifted his head. There's a newcomer in the castle. He's the black ink disciple that Sir Territory Lord has taken in. Since both of you are of the same race, you should approach him when there's a chance. After bringing Yang Kai to a side hall in the castle and helping him settle in, the high-rank Black Ink clansman left. This side hall was built according to the Black Ink clan's average size, so the ceiling was pretty high. This place appeared too spacious when a human lived here. In any case, Yang Kai didn't really mind. After looking around, he was satisfied. He then sat down with his legs crossed, though he wasn't in a rush to cultivate. Now that his small universe had been damaged, it was less efficient for him to cultivate. Even though the World Tree clone would help him repair the damage done, it would take several years to fully recover. Fortunately, before He Yuan entered the Black Ink nest, he told Gue Liao to get Yang Kai a profound in-spirit fruit, which solved the pressing issue for him. He had planned on obtaining a profound in-spirit fruit upon arriving at the Black Ink clan's domain, so that the secret in his small universe wouldn't be exposed. If his small universe fully recovered without a profound in-spirit fruit several years later, it would undoubtedly arouse He Yuan's suspicion. Moreover, there was one thing that concerned Yang Kai. After He Yuan and the other territory lords entered the Black Ink nest, the entire territory was closed off. Yang Kai had no idea how long it would take He Yuan to recover, but the latter obviously wouldn't come out of the Black Ink nest in short order. In other words, he probably wouldn't see He Yuan for the next few years. There was both a good and bad to this situation. The good was that Yang Kai could gather information on his own without any restraints. The bad thing was that he wouldn't be able to head to the royal city without He Yuan. He might not even be able to leave this universe fragment. There was a Black Ink disciple, who was approaching the great grandmaster level in artifact refining, developing warships in the depths of the Black Ink clan's domain. Yang Kai had to ascertain this individual's identity and location, so if he was unable to leave this universe fragment, his means of gathering information would be limited. The difficulty of the task made him feel anxious. While this was giving him a headache, Yang Kai suddenly felt an unfamiliar aura approaching him. After becoming startled for a brief moment, he quickly tried to examine it. He realized that it was a human who was coming over. Soon, Yang Kai heard someone knocking on the door. He hurriedly got to his feet and opened the door, only to see a burly man standing outside his room. There was no doubt that the humans residing in this place were all Black Ink disciples. Yang Kai had seen some Black Ink disciples when he followed Gue Liao back to the castle though, so he wasn't surprised. However, the Black Ink disciple in front of his eyes was overly towering as a human. Standing in front of this man, Yang Kai only came up to his chest. It had to be noted that even though Yang Kai wasn't a particularly tall man, he wasn't short by any means. This went to show how burly the man before his eyes was. What bothered Yang Kai wasn't this man's height though, but his aura. The energy fluctuations around this man suggested that he was in the seventh order open heaven realm, but his aura was tinged with a conspicuous sense of ferocity. Black Ink strength could be seen wafting from his body, which made it look like he was covered in a layer of dark fog. What concerned Yang Kai even further was the anomalies on his figure. There was a sarcoma on this person's neck, and his hunched back really had a large hump in it. The moment Yang Kai saw this person, he felt a sense of danger. This kind of danger didn't come from the threat this person might pose, but rather the other party's own condition. In other words, this person was constantly in a perilous state. Yang Kai couldn't help but recall what Luan Baifeng, who was corrupted by Black Ink strength at that time, had shown him in the Black Prison. Back then, Xianxia witnessed several people with similar conditions to this man. One of the primary reasons the cave heavens and paradises had been hiding the existence of black ink strength from the general public was that this strength was too dangerous, so a panic might be caused if this news was spread. Moreover, they were worried that some people couldn't resist the allure of black ink strength and would proactively seek to become corrupted. Human growth was limited, especially in the open heaven realm. How high a cultivator could eventually push their martial Tao was decided the moment they ascended to the open heaven realm. Usually, after a person ascended to the open heaven realm, they could only increase their order by 2 regardless of how hard they cultivated. This was the reason the cave heavens and paradises spent lots of time and resources nurturing the brightest disciples from a young age. Only the disciples who directly ascended to the 5th order and above had the right to become high-rank open heaven realm masters one day. If a person directly ascended to the 4th order, the limit in their lifetime would be the 6th order. However, after an open heaven realm master was corrupted by black ink strength, they could break through this limitation and keep ascending to higher orders. This was an allure that many open heaven realm masters could not resist. That was certainly the case for the vice sect master of Langya Paradise, Yuan Du. Despite his lofty status, he was still unable to resist this temptation, so he proactively sought to become corrupted and turn into a black ink disciple. Ever since then, he became the source of disturbance in Langya Paradise. It was imaginable that once this news was spread, it would send a shockwave across the entire 3,000 worlds. After all, Yuan Du wasn't the only one who was unable to keep moving forward in the martial Tao due to their innate limits. However, most were not aware of the hidden dangers that came with this method. While black ink strength could help an open heaven realm master achieve a breakthrough beyond their initial limitations, there was a price to pay, one that most people wouldn't be able to bear. Back in the Black Prison, Xianxia had seen several open heaven realm masters who achieved a breakthrough with the help of black ink strength. Nevertheless, they all ended up in a horrible state. The breakthrough beyond their limits and the sharp increase in their power could cause them to explode then and there, and those that did survive had their figures radically transformed, developing mishapen features and horrible tumors. In addition, their mental state deteriorated significantly, becoming far more aggressive and irrational. The black ink disciple in front of Xianxia undoubtedly suffered such side effects. The sarcoma on his neck, the hump on his back, and his unusually large build were all the result of the black ink strength's corruption. In other words, this person wasn't supposed to have ascended to the 7th order open heaven realm. He broke through the limit by leveraging the black ink strength. Even though he had successfully reached the next order, his figure had also been transformed. Xianxia could clearly feel that even though the aura of this 7th order open heaven realm master was dangerous, his foundation was unstable. Like an insect-infected building, it would fall apart when someone gently pushed it. If this person kept cultivating to increase his strength, he would most likely explode as his body was no longer able to bear a power that was too great for him. Countless thoughts flashed across Xianxia's mind as he secretly sighed. He then asked, "You are? So, it is Brother Lu?" Xianxia nodded gently. "Is there anything I can help you with?" Lu Zian put on a big smile. "I heard that Sir Territory Lord personally took on a black ink disciple, so I came here to have a look out of curiosity. Sir Territory Lord is powerful, so he's usually not interested in ordinary black ink disciples. I've not seen him taking one over the years. You're the first one, Brother Yang." "I'm truly honored, then," Xianxia replied humbly. He reckoned that Lu Zian must have a reason for visiting him, so he stepped aside. "Please come in, Brother Lu." Without being overly polite, Lu Zian stepped into the room. Xianxia then closed the door. This side hall was basically empty, so it must have been vacant for quite a long time. He hadn't prepared anything since he had just gotten here. Therefore, he fished out a table and some chairs from his small universe and invited the other party to have a seat. Lu Zian directly sat down on a chair. After Xianxia was seated as well, he asked, "Brother Lu, you said you're a black ink disciple under Sir Guiliao?" "Yes." Lu Zian nodded. "How long have you been living here?" Xianxia asked. Lu Zian smacked his lips and sighed. "It's been 1,000 years. Not a short time, is it?" "It's indeed a very long time." Xianxia nodded. "I'm new to this place, so I know nothing about the Black Ink clan. You'll have to give me some guidance in the future, Brother Lu. Lu Ziyan guffawed. Of course. Since we're both working for Sir Territory Lord, you can just tell me if you need any help. Although we're Black Ink disciples, we're of the same race after all. Let's meet up more often whenever there's a chance. You're right. Yang Kai agreed with him. Which cave, heaven or paradise, did you come from? Lu Ziyan waved his hand. Since we're Black Ink disciples now, the past no longer has anything to do with us. There's no need to talk about where we came from. Since you're now within the Black Ink clan's territory, you should quickly try to understand your place. Understood. Yang Kai replied humbly. Lu Ziyan went on to say, to be honest, I wasn't used to it when I first came here. However, after coming into contact with more people, I've realized that the Black Ink clan aren't any different from humans. You just have to get along with everyone else. If you want anyone to help you with something, or if you want to be regarded highly, you have to be on good terms with others. If you do that, you'll be fine. A glint flashed through Yang Kai's eyes when he heard that. You have a point, Brother Lu. Since this guy had made it clear, Yang Kai was naturally aware of his intentions. He then rummaged through his clothes and fished out a space ring before pushing it towards him. Since we're friends now, I'd like to give you a small gift. I'll definitely need your guidance in the future. Lu Ziyan arched his brow and guffawed. Well, you shouldn't have. There's actually no need for that. Despite saying that, he directly picked up the space ring and scanned it with his divine sense. The next moment, his smile froze. There were only a few 100,000 open heaven pills in the space ring. This number of open heaven pills could only last him for half a month. Even though he was a Black Ink disciple, he was still a human. Hence, the cultivation resources he needed were the same as what humans would use. An unfazed Yang Kai explained, this is already half of all my current assets, Brother Lu. You should know that when human soldiers go to war, they don't bring a lot of resources with them. The same rule applied to all the great passes, as they were worried that once a cultivator lost his or her life on the battlefield, their resources would be lost as well. Therefore, the cultivators who went out to fight would leave almost all their assets in their residences. That way, even if they were killed, their fellow clansmen could still take the resources and make use of them. Yang Kai was aware of this rule, but those from Blue Sky Pass had never restrained him with it. Therefore, all his wealth was still in his small universe. Lu Ziyan frowned upon hearing that, as he was unable to refute Yang Kai since what he said was indeed the truth. The Black Ink clan had obtained a lot of space rings from the humans on the battlefields in the past, but there weren't really any valuable items in those rings. After giving it a thought, he said, forget it. It's the thought that counts. Many thanks for your understanding, Brother Lu. Yang Kai cupped his fist, then said, since you're Sir Gue Liao's Black Ink disciple, can you help me with something? Even though Lu Ziyan had accepted the gift, he didn't seem ready to lend him a hand. Instead, he asked vigilantly, what help do you need? Yang Kai replied, before Sir He Yuan entered the Black Ink nest, he had told Sir Gue Liao to obtain a profound Yin spirit fruit for me. Since you are Sir Gue Liao's Black Ink disciple, can you help me ask him when he'll give me the profound Yin spirit fruit? Upon hearing that, Lu Ziyan was startled. Sir Territory Lord ordered a profound Yin spirit fruit be given to you? Yes. Yang Kai nodded, then asked curiously, what's wrong with that? Lu Ziyan sized him up and shook his head. Nothing. Then, he rose from the chair. I can help you ask Sir Gue Liao about it, but it's not up to me to influence his decision. Regardless, I thank you for helping me. Lu Ziyan nodded impassively. I'll inform you when there's any news. Yang Kai got up and saw him off. See you around, Brother Lu. Lu Ziyan left the place and waved his hand without turning his head. Yang Kai sported a dispassionate expression as he watched him leave. Even though both of them were humans, he didn't think Lu Ziyan genuinely wanted to get closer to him after their conversation. This was different from his previous experience. When he pretended to be a Black Ink disciple and worked for Nguyen back then, Yang Kai had been on good terms with B2, D4, and E5. Even though they had different temperaments, they sincerely wanted to get along with him. Perhaps it was because they were all humans. However, Lu Ziyan was different as he didn't even seem to regard Yang Kai as someone from the same race. Perhaps the black ink strength had fully warped his temperament. Even though all black ink disciples would have their thinking changed so they were completely loyal to the black ink clan, the impact of black ink strength was obviously more severe on Lu Ziyan. This must have something to do with the fact that black ink strength had helped him achieve a breakthrough. Yang Kai had no idea whether it was Lu Ziyan's own intention to visit him, or if it was Gue Liao's order. It would be interesting if it was the latter. Why did Gue Liao want to probe him? He was He Yuan's black ink disciple on paper, while Gue Liao was the designated person to handle the affairs in He Yuan's territory. They basically had nothing to do with each other as they had never met prior to this. Nor were there any grudges between them. Since he was unable to figure it out, Yang Kai decided to put the matter aside. He then returned to his room and refined some open heaven pills. He wouldn't dare to refine any resources to cultivate. After all, he had just told Lu Ziyan that he was broke. It wouldn't be sensible if he was suddenly able to fish out a set of 7th-order resources. Moreover, there wasn't any restriction around his room that could block divine senses. Any energy fluctuations in this place could easily be detected by anyone else. At the same time, in a grand hall that was in the deepest part of the castle, Lu Ziyan was standing in front of Gue Liao and reporting to him about his conversation with Yang Kai. Gue Liao listened to it with an unenthusiastic expression. After Lu Ziyan was done with the report, he stole a glance at Gue Liao. Upon seeing that the latter was expressionless, he summoned his courage and asked, "Master, Yang Kai said that Sir Territory Lord had promised to give him a profound in-spirit fruit." Gue Liao grunted, "Yes, that's true." Lu Ziyan frowned. "Why does Sir Territory Lord treasure him so much? He's a newcomer who hasn't made any contributions. If he's given such a reward right away, he'll most likely become arrogant." Gue Liao shot him a glance. "What's wrong? Are you not happy with it?" Lu Ziyan quickly said he wouldn't dare to, but he was evidently unresigned. In the past, he had done everything he could to defend the humans. After he was corrupted by black ink strength on the battlefield, he sacrificed a part of his small universe. Therefore, when he became a black ink disciple, his small universe was incomplete. Then, it took him 300 years to gain enough contributions on the battlefield before Gue Liao gave him a profound in-spirit fruit to repair his small universe. The treatment he had received was totally not comparable to what Yang Kai could enjoy now, which was why he was unresigned. However, he wouldn't dare to express his true feelings in front of Gue Liao now. Upon seeing his expression, Gue Liao snorted. "You heard what Xiagu said earlier. That guy is strong. That's why Sir Territory Lord regards him highly. How are you comparable to him?" A sense of haughtiness flashed across Lu Ziyan's face. "We'll only find out about it after he and I fight," Gue Liao said impassively. "He's Sir Territory Lord's black ink disciple. If you really dare to do anything to him, Sir Territory Lord will not let you off when he's done recuperating." Lu Ziyan grinned. "Don't worry, Master. I'll only teach him a lesson when there's a chance. It's not like I'll kill him. I won't make things difficult for you." Gue Liao nodded. "Good. Just don't go too far." After giving it a thought, he shook his head. "Actually, you'd better not complicate the matter. Even though Sir Territory Lord is recuperating in the black ink nest, he'll come out one day." Lu Ziyan frowned. "Do we give him a profound in-spirit fruit just like this?" Gue Liao sneered. "Sir Territory Lord only ordered me to get him a profound in-spirit fruit. As for when I'll find one, that's up to me. I'll also see if he's tactful enough before I'll decide whether I'll give it to him." He tapped on the table. "I guess he'll look for you again. I'm sure you know what to do then." "I get it, Master. Don't worry about it." Lu Ziyan replied respectfully. "You may leave now." Gue Liao waved his hand. Then Lu Ziyan left the place. Yang Kai cultivated silently in his room. More than 10 days later, the profound in-spirit fruit was still nowhere in sight. Logically, there should be all sorts of resources in the Territory Lord's territory. When he came to this place with He Yuan, he witnessed the prosperity firsthand. Even though profound in-spirit fruits were rare, the demand for them among the Black Ink clan should be far smaller than that among the humans, so there should be a reserve of them in the castle. Moreover, He Yuan had given the order in public, and Yang Kai had asked Lu Ziyan to help him ask Gui Liao about it. Hence, Gui Liao should have sent a profounding spirit fruit to him by now. Yang Kai felt that something was off as he still hadn't got his hands on a profounding spirit fruit up until now. After giving it a thought, he decided to look for Gui Liao and ask about it. Yang Kai directly stopped him and asked, "Excuse me, where's Sir Gui Liao?" The Black Ink clansman was startled for a moment as he swept a glance over Yang Kai with surprise. It had to be noted that Black Ink disciples were lowly slaves in the Black Ink clan's territory, and had to be subservient whenever they saw any Black Ink clansman. It was the first time this Black Ink clansman came across a Black Ink disciple who dared to stop him like this. However, he soon recalled that this Black Ink disciple was personally corrupted by Sir Territory Lord, so he was unlike the other Black Ink disciples. He supposed that was the reason this Black Ink disciple was this audacious. While suppressing his fury, he shook his head. "I have no idea." Upon finishing his words, he stopped responding to Yang Kai and left. With no other choice, Yang Kai went on to ask several Black Ink clansmen about it. But none of them knew where Gui Liao was. Perhaps they were aware of Gui Liao's whereabouts, but they just were not willing to tell him. This made Yang Kai furrow his brow. Since he was unable to find Gui Liao, how was he supposed to ask about the profound in-spirit fruit? After giving it a thought, he decided to release his divine sense to scan the entire castle. The powerful divine sense swept across the castle like a tide, which prompted everyone in the place to react. There were many feudal lords in the castle, so it was only natural that they were furious at Yang Kai, who had the gall to scan the place with his divine sense. Nevertheless, Yang Kai retracted his divine sense a brief moment later. Before the feudal lords could counterattack, his divine sense had returned to him. During the momentary inspection, he was unable to detect Gui Liao's aura. It seemed that those Black Ink clansmen were not lying when they said they didn't know where Gui Liao was. After pondering on it for a moment, he headed in a particular direction. A moment later, he arrived at a courtyard where there was a restriction set up. He directly flicked at the restriction and caused a layer of ripples to spread. Soon, the restriction was turned off. After the door was opened, Lu Ziyan's furious-looking face came into Yang Kai's sight. It wasn't because of luck that he found Lu Ziyan's residence. When he scanned the castle with his divine sense just now, the restriction in this place was triggered. For a brief moment, Lu Ziyan revealed his aura to ascertain what was going on. That was how Yang Kai found out his whereabouts. "Brother Lu." Yang Kai took a step back and cupped his fist. Fury was written all over Lu Ziyan's face. Upon seeing Yang Kai, he snapped, "It's you. I was wondering who had the gall to do such a thing." Yang Kai chuckled, "I'm sorry, but I had no other choice." "What's wrong?" Lu Ziyan asked in a grim voice. Yang Kai nodded. "There's something I need to ask you about." After thanking him, Yang Kai entered the courtyard with him. As he looked around, he arched his brow. This courtyard was definitely much better than the room assigned to him by Gui Liao, as it was more suitable for humans to live in. It was apparently because Gui Liao regarded Lu Ziyan highly. On the other hand, even though Yang Kai was He Yuan's Black Ink disciple, he wasn't close to Gui Liao. That was the reason Gui Liao didn't give him the same treatment and settled him down in a random room. Even if He Yuan found out about it, he wouldn't be displeased. However, it showed how little Gui Liao cared about Yang Kai. There was only a table and a chair in the courtyard. Lu Ziyan directly took a seat. Yang Kai stood in front of him and looked around. He felt as if he was here to report to him regarding work-related matters. "Whatever you have to say, just say it," Lu Ziyan said impatiently. With a smile, Yang Kai fished out a chair from his small universe and took a seat across from Lu Ziyan before replying, "Brother Lu, I'm here to ask you about the matter I had mentioned previously. Is there any update?" Lu Ziyan shot him a glance. "What matter are you talking about?" Yang Kai narrowed his eyes. "Are you playing dumb, Brother Lu? I had only mentioned one thing." He felt frustrated in his heart. The last time they met, he already realized that Lu Ziyan was haughty and aggressive, but there wasn't much hostility between them. However, this time he could feel that Lu Ziyan was hostile towards him. He wondered what had happened as Lu Zi and also spoke in a weird tone. In any case, both of them were black ink disciples, so what was the point of him acting standoffish? Moreover, he had previously asked him to inquire about the profound in-spirit fruit, but the latter played dumb now. Although he didn't need the profound in-spirit fruit, Yang Kai had to get his hands on it to cover up the secrets in his small universe. Hence, he was determined to obtain the fruit. An unfazed Lu Zi and remained seated and said impassively, "Are you talking about the profound in-spirit fruit?" Yang Kai nodded. "You finally recalled it." Lu Zian replied, "I asked Sir Gue Liao about it on your behalf, but he didn't say anything. It's not up to me to influence Sir's decision." Yang Kai knitted his brows together. "Where is Sir Gue Liao then?" Lu Zian snorted. "This Lu is a black ink disciple under Sir Gue Liao. Since he's the master, it's not like he has to tell me where he'd go whenever he heads out. How am I supposed to know where he is?" Yang Kai was rendered speechless as he had the urge to summon Azure Dragon Spear and kill him. Upon noticing the gloomy expression on the other man's face, Lu Zian changed the topic by saying, "Brother Yang, do you remember what I told you previously?" Yang Kai replied, "You told me many things at that time. Which one do you mean exactly?" Lu Zian grinned. "Since you've forgotten about it, this Lu will tell you one more time. The Black Ink clan and the human race are not so different. You just have to get along with everyone. If you need someone's help, you can obtain it by being on good terms with them." Instantly, Yang Kai appeared to be in a dilemma. "Brother Lu, I only have a small number of open heaven pills. I gave you half of them, so I'm left with very few now." Lu Zian snorted. "No one is coveting your pathetic number of open heaven pills." A puzzled Yang Kai asked, "What do you want then, Brother Lu?" Lu Zian replied impassively, "It's not what I want. I have no say when it comes to the profound in-spirit fruit." Upon realizing his meaning, Yang Kai leaned closer and asked in a small voice, "What does Sir Gue Liao want?" Then, this guy had been beating around the bush in order to make Yang Kai understand that he had to gain Gue Liao's favor. It was up to Gue Liao to make a decision regarding the profound in-spirit fruit, and Lu Zian was Gue Liao's black ink disciple. Yang Kai was certain that Lu Zian must have gotten Gue Liao's permission to do all this. So, he's waiting for me to take the initiative to contact him. Yang Kai finally understood why Gue Liao didn't immediately give him the profound in-spirit fruit, even though it was He Yuan's order. He hadn't expected that there was such a practice in Black Ink Clan. He thought that it was a terrible inconvenience. Then he went on to say, "Brother Lu, I'm sure you're aware that I have nothing valuable with me. I'm worried that I can't give Sir Gue Liao anything he would want." Lu Zian put on a meaningful grin. "Don't worry. You have plenty of what Sir Gue Liao likes the most." Upon finishing his words, he started sizing Yang Kai up. Yang Kai's expression slowly turned cold as he narrowed his eyes. "Please make it clear to me, Brother Lu." It had come to a point where there was no longer a need to beat around the bush. Lu Zian said, "I'm sure you know that Black Ink clansmen are able to consume world force. This doesn't just help increase their power, but it's also a kind of hobby for them. Sir Gue Liao's hobby is slightly different from others, though I suppose it's not accurate to say that. Perhaps many Black Ink clansmen have this hobby. They love consuming fresh world force." Yang Kai was startled upon hearing that. It was the first time he heard someone describe world force as fresh. World force was the foundation of an open heaven realm master's power, not a living creature. Was there such a thing as stale world force, then? Feeling puzzled, he asked, "What do you mean by fresh world force?" Lu Zian replied with a smile, "Have you heard of the world sphere before, Brother Yang?" Yang Kai nodded. "Yes." Lu Zian explained, "Strictly speaking, world spheres are a kind of artifact invented by the Black Ink clan. It's used to absorb the world force that leaks out after open heaven realm masters are killed on the battlefield. World spheres are sold in every Black Ink clan's territory, and they're quite expensive. By buying a world sphere, a Black Ink clansman can consume the world force inside it to cultivate. The world force in sealed worlds could be consumed by the Black Ink clan as well. However, that kind of world force is like a tree without roots or a river without a source. It's dead. To the Black Ink clan, this kind of world force is not fresh enough. It's like stale food for humans. He paused for a moment and went on to say, on the other hand, open heaven realm masters like us have very fresh world force in our small universes. Sir Guiliao is pretty picky, so he prefers to consume this kind of world force. Then, he looked fervently at Yang Kai. So, it's easy for you to gain Sir Guiliao's favor. You just have to open your small universe and let him consume your world force to his heart's content. After that, he'll grant your wish. Yang Kai lowered his gaze and said impassively, is this how you please Sir Guiliao? Lu Zi directly nodded. Yes. However, according to Sir Guiliao, the world force of every open heaven realm master tastes different. This Lu has been Sir Guiliao's servant for a long time. In the past, he loved to consume my world force, but he hasn't done so for a long time now. I suppose he's already sick of it. Since you're a newcomer, you can let Sir Guiliao have a taste of a different kind of world force. He said that the more powerful a human is, the more delicious his world force will be, and you're a powerful cultivator. If you're willing to do this, I'm sure Sir Guiliao will see you in a different light. It'll be much easier for you to get things done as well. Is this the condition? Yang Kai lifted his head and asked. Lu Zi shook his head. It's not a condition. It's just my suggestion. Brother Yang, a wise man will adapt to the circumstances. This is the Black Ink clan's territory, and we're Black Ink disciples. I'm Sir Territory Lord's Black Ink disciple, not Guiliao's. Lu Zi's expression changed. Stop being obstinate, Brother Yang. You'll only lose a bit of your world force. If you can get a profound in-spirit fruit, you'll be able to repair the damaged part of your small universe. By then, you can slowly cultivate and make up for the losses. Yang Kai shot him a piercing glance. Before Sir Territory Lord entered the Black Ink nest, he ordered Guiliao to get me a profound in-spirit fruit. Is he going to disobey Sir Territory Lord? Lu Zi chuckled. No one has the guts to disobey Sir Territory Lord's orders. In fact, Sir Guiliao has left the place to look for a profound in-spirit fruit for you. However, I'm sure you know that it's a very rare item. As for when he'll find it, or whether he'll be able to find it at all, that is up to the heavens. Up to the heavens? Yang Kai secretly cursed. It was apparent that Guiliao wanted to force him to make a concession in such a way. He had never expected that Guiliao had a hobby of consuming fresh world force from humans. Even though the one whose world force was getting absorbed would suffer some losses, they would be fine as long as not too much of their world force was sucked and their foundation was undamaged. The lost world force could be replenished easily enough. However, there was no way Yang Kai would agree to such a demand. Previously, he gave up a part of his small universe twice on the battlefield because he had no other choice. Additionally, he was doing that to fool the Black Ink clansmen so that they wouldn't examine his small universe. Lu Ziyan leaned against the seat and said calmly, why don't you go back and sleep on it? Everything I've said to you is sincere. There's no need to sleep on it. Yang Kai shook his head. Lu Ziyan stared fixedly at him. You mean? Yang Kai snorted. This Yang is Sir Territory Lord's Black Ink disciple, not Guiliao's. Regardless of what Sir Territory Lord tells me to do, I'll not hesitate to do it for him. As for Guiliao's ridiculous demand, I'll tell Sir Territory Lord about it when he comes out of the Black Ink nest. Lu Ziyan's expression changed drastically as he landed a slap on the table. Don't go too far, you little bastard. It'll take Sir Territory Lord several years to recuperate. During this period of time, you'll have to work for Sir Guiliao. What's wrong? Yang Kai shot him a glance. Is he going to kill me? You're just a Black Ink disciple. If you make a mistake, why wouldn't Sir Guiliao kill you? Lu Ziyan appeared ferocious. Yang Kai sneered. Let's see if he has the guts to do so. Lu Ziyan fell into a dazed state. After staring at him for a long time, he shook his head. You're insane. Insane. He couldn't sense any respect for Guiliao from Yang Kai, which was inconceivable. As a Black Ink disciple, how did Yang Kai have the guts to dismiss a feudal lord like Guiliao? It seemed that he didn't know his place. Was he confident because he was the Territory Lord's Black Ink disciple? Lu Ziyan couldn't help but feel bitter. All of a sudden, Yang Kai extended his hand. Give them back. What? Lu Ziyan was startled. The open heaven pills I gave you the other day. Yang Kai pulled a long face. Initially, even though Lu Ziyan was deplorable, Yang Kai didn't intend to be on bad terms with him. After all, he was new to this place, so he didn't want to complicate things. However, what had happened totally disappointed him. Gui Liao wanted to consume his world force, and he even told Lu Ziyan to con him into accepting. Yang Kai would never agree to such a demand. However, he needed a profound in-spirit fruit to cover up the secrets in his small universe. After taking everything into consideration, he decided to make a huge fuss so that Gui Liao had to take notice. In this castle, Lu Ziyan was the best breakthrough he could make use of to achieve his goal. Lu Ziyan couldn't believe his ears. A person must be extremely thick-skinned to have the nerve to take back what he had given out. Honestly speaking, several 100,000 open heaven pills didn't matter to Lu Ziyan. However, he could never give them back to Yang Kai given the latter's attitude. If he really did so, it would be the same as admitting he was afraid of Yang Kai. After a moment of silence, Lu Ziyan sneered. What open heaven pills? I've consumed them all. Yang Kai balled up his fists as cracking sounds were heard. His aura was rising rapidly. Since you've consumed my open heaven pills, I just have to make you spit them back out. He couldn't help but have the urge to laugh. Previously, he had suggested giving Yang Kai a lesson in front of Gui Liao. At that time, he was just displeased with the different treatments he and Yang Kai received. This brat surnamed Yang could immediately get a profound in-spirit fruit upon arrival, while it wasn't until 300 years after he became a black ink disciple that he got the fruit. Moreover, he only obtained it because he had made many contributions. Nevertheless, Gui Liao told him not to complicate things, so he cast the idea aside. Now that he was provoked by Yang Kai though, he could seize the chance to teach him a lesson. Certainly, he wouldn't dare to disobey Gui Liao's order. However, there was nothing to worry about now since it was Yang Kai who made the first move. This way, he could explain himself to Gui Liao. When Jia Gu reported to Gui Liao about the battle that Yang Kai had taken part in, Lu Ziyan, who was hiding in the darkness, could hear it clearly as well. He knew that this new black ink disciple that the territory lord had taken on was powerful, as Yang Kai was able to lead a squad to kill several thousand black ink clansmen, including more than 10 feudal lords. Lu Ziyan didn't think he was capable of doing that. However, that was what Yang Kai could achieve when he was at his peak. During that battle, Yang Kai sacrificed pieces of his small universe twice. Now, his small universe was incomplete, and his foundation had been damaged. There was no doubt that his power had plunged. In that case, why would Lu Ziyan need to fear him? He was instantly infuriated by Yang Kai's provocation, and his seventh order aura flared sharply. His entire figure was engulfed in a dark fog as he pushed his power, his figure seemingly expanding as well. The sarcoma on his neck throbbed against his skin like a beating heart. He slowly rose from the chair and looked condescendingly at Yang Kai. With a grin, he snickered. Brat, do you know the consequences of provoking me? Even though he appeared to be giving Yang Kai a warning, he was actually eager to see him make a move. Yang Kai scoffed. Anyone ever tell you, you talk too much? Upon finishing his words, he threw out his fist. Lu Ziyan almost had the urge to cheer for Yang Kai. He had never expected this person surnamed Yang to be so impetuous that he would make a move on a whim. It was unlike how polite Yang Kai had appeared to be up until now. This was exactly the outcome Lu Ziyan wanted. The moment he saw Yang Kai making a move, he also pushed out his fist without hesitation. He was a burly man, so his fist was also significantly larger than that of Yang Kai. When their fists came into contact, it was as though two universe worlds had clashed. As the world force surged, Lu Ziyan abruptly stopped appearing haughty as his huge figure was sent flying away like an arrow. He directly crashed into a wall and formed a pit in the ground. On the other hand, Yang Kai was forced to back several steps before he managed to stabilize himself. His surging aura made his clothes flap in the wind. Shaking his head, Yang Kai stepped forward. He wasn't used to the condition he was in. If he were still at the peak of his power, he could have severely wounded someone like Lu Ziyan with one punch and killed him in 3. However, His strength really had plunged as a result of the damage to his small universe, leaving him far weaker than before. Fortunately, his opponent was Lu Zian. Even though Lu Zian was also a 7th Order Master, he reached this order by using the black ink strength to break through his natural limit, the 6th Order Open Heaven Realm. Lu Zian's foundation was unstable, so he was unable to fully utilize the power of the 7th Order Open Heaven Realm. After an exchange of moves, Yang Kai had a better judgment of Lu Zian's true power. He was indeed a 7th Order Master, as manifested by his ample world force. However, he was unable to fully utilize that power. His cultivation was nothing more than a castle built from sand. On the other hand, even though Yang Kai had sacrificed a part of his small universe twice, which caused his foundation to be damaged, he still had the World Tree clone to continuously purify his world force. Therefore, while he was no match for the other party when it came to strength output, the quality of his power allowed him to overpower his opponent. That was the reason he gained the upper hand following the exchange of moves. An increasingly ferocious aura billowed from the ruins. A burly figure stepped out of the demolished building. For every step Lu Zian took, the entire ground seemed to be shaking. Black ink strength was seen swirling around him, and even his eyes had turned completely black. He glared at Yang Kai and said through clenched teeth, "Boy, you court death." As soon as he finished speaking, he charged towards Yang Kai at the speed of lightning. While in mid-air, he turned his fists into innumerable phantoms and engulfed Yang Kai with them. Yang Kai had already intended to make a fuss, so he naturally wouldn't back down at this point. He charged right at Lu Zian and engaged him in a brutal melee. The noise of the battle soon alerted everyone in the castle. The feudal lords, who resided in different places, subsequently appeared and watched them from a distance. When they realized it was a battle between Gue Liao's Black Ink disciple and the Territory Lord's Black Ink disciple, they were astounded. They had no idea what had happened that caused these two humans to get into a life-and-death fight. Nevertheless, these feudal lords didn't have the intention of interfering or stopping them. To them, even though these humans had been corrupted by Black Ink strength, they were not the same as Black Ink clansmen like them who had a noble bloodline. Naturally, they wouldn't care whether one of them was injured or even killed. In fact, they had fun watching the battle and chatted among themselves. The battle in the courtyard between Yang Kai and Lu Zian was intense. As time passed, Yang Kai realized that this guy indeed had a problem mobilizing his strength. Sometimes, his attacks would be so forceful that even Yang Kai found it hard to fend off, but sometimes, his strikes would be so powerless that Yang Kai could easily find openings and land direct hits on his figure, which caused him to groan in pain. It meant that Lu Zian was unable to use his power flexibly. Instead, his utilization of his world force was unstable. Sometimes he could showcase his real power, but sometimes he would be strong in will while weak in strength. Any Open Heaven Realm master with a solid foundation wouldn't face such a problem. One must be fully at ease with using their power in order to ascend to the Open Heaven Realm, so they wouldn't have to deal with such a situation. The reason Lu Zian was unable to effortlessly use his strength was that he didn't deserve to be in the 7th Order Open Heaven Realm in the first place. Given his condition, he would be killed soon after he stepped onto the battlefield. Once his weaknesses were detected by the opponent, he would lose his life. In fact, it wasn't hard for Yang Kai to kill him now, but he didn't have the intention of doing so. It was no longer possible to save Lu Zian. Even if the Black Ink strength inside his body was dispelled using purifying light, his small universe would shatter as it was unable to bear 7th Order Open Heaven Realm power. Nevertheless, he was Gue Liao's Black Ink disciple, so if he was killed here, Gue Liao would definitely avenge his death. Lu Zian was right to say that it would take He Yuan several years to recuperate, and Gue Liao was tasked with handling the affairs in the territory until then. Yang Kai would have a hard time here if he offended him too seriously. It wasn't long before Lu Zian fell into a complete disadvantage. This made him increasingly infuriated. He initially thought that Yang Kai wouldn't be a match for him as the latter's foundation had been damaged, but after the battle started, he realized that things were different from what he had imagined. Yang Kai was still powerful even though his small universe was incomplete. It was no wonder that, when he was at the peak of his power, he was able to kill so many feudal lords and Black Ink clansmen. The more he exerted his strength, the thicker the black ink strength around him became, while the aura wafting from his body became increasingly unstable. By activating the power he was unable to control, Lu Ziyan would soon suffer a backlash. When that happened, he would be crippled even if he didn't lose his life. Just then, Yang Kai detected something as he slowed down his attack. Lu Ziyan was elated upon seeing that, but just as he was preparing to push his advantage, a voice was heard snapping, "Both of you? Stop right there." In the next instant, a figure descended from the sky and landed between Yang Kai and Lu Ziyan. An agile Yang Kai promptly leapt backwards. On the other hand, Lu Ziyan, who was blinded by wrath, forcefully pushed out his fist and attacked the person in front of him. However, the instant he made out the person's face, he was flabbergasted as he quickly retracted his fist. Forcefully withdrawing his strike caused Lu Ziyan's small universe to shake and his world force to descend into chaos. The next moment, he was heard spraying out a mouthful of blood. His aura had withered as he was unable to bear the consequences of this impact. While trying to support his own weight, he cupped his fists. "Master!" Gui Liao shot him an impassive glance, which caused his back to be covered with cold sweat and his legs to tremble. A black ink disciple could never go against his master, and this time he seemed to have screwed things up. That was why he was apprehensive. "Sir Gui Liao." Yang Kai cupped his fist while secretly scoffing at the fact that Gui Liao was finally alerted. Judging from the direction he came from, he was indeed not in the castle moments ago. However, the repercussions of the battle between two Seventh-Order masters could spread across half this universe fragment. As long as he wasn't too far away, Gui Liao could definitely sense it. Upon hearing that, Gui Liao turned around and glared at Yang Kai. While the territory lord was still recuperating, two black ink disciples got into a fight and caused a large part of the castle to be damaged. Regardless of the cause of the fight, Gui Liao would be held responsible for not managing the situation properly. When the territory lord returned from the black ink nest and asked about it, Gui Liao would probably be reprimanded. Although it wasn't a big issue, he was still displeased. "Can anyone tell me what's going on?" Gui Liao asked in a grim voice. Lu Ziyan wouldn't dare to say anything. It wasn't like he could say Yang Kai had turned him down and wanted to get back the open heaven pills given to him, which was why they got into a fight. While Lu Ziyan was timid, Yang Kai was confident as he cupped his fist. "Sir Gui Liao, I'd like to file a complaint against Lu Ziyan for oppressing a newcomer like me who doesn't know the customs in the Black Ink clan's base. He has demanded a lot of benefits from me using your name." Right after Yang Kai finished speaking, Gui Liao felt his heart sinking as he regretted asking such a foolish question. He didn't give it any serious consideration as he was furious earlier, but now that he thought about it, he should have brought these two humans to a quiet place so that there wouldn't be so many feudal lords watching them. "Is that true?" Gui Liao narrowed his eyes and glanced at Lu Ziyan. Lu Ziyan's face was covered with cold sweat. "No," Yang Kai glowered at him. "Do you have the gall to say that you didn't take my open heaven pills on the first day of my arrival?" Yang Kai snorted. "If you hadn't asked for them, why would I give anything to you? Indeed, you didn't make it clear, but you implied that I should give you some benefits if I wanted to live a better life here. I'm not a fool, so it's expected that I would be able to read between the lines. I'm a newcomer, so I wouldn't dare to say no. I could only make a sacrifice." He then turned to Gui Liao and cupped his fist. "Please stand up for me, Sir Gui Liao. I only had a small number of open heaven pills, but I still gave him half of everything I had, thinking that I could befriend him. To my surprise, this guy was greedy as he thought that my gift was not valuable enough. He even used your name and tried to demand more from me today. Stop spouting nonsense." Lu Ziyan roared as he was worried that Yang Kai would break the secret to everyone. The Black Ink clansmen in the castle were aware of Gui Liao's hobby. In fact, many of them enjoyed doing it as well. However, knowing was one thing, but making it public was another. It would be fine to do some things in private, but it would be ugly when they were talked about publicly. It was especially true as Yang Kai's identity was special. He was the Black Ink disciple personally corrupted by He Yuan territory lord. It would have been fine if Yang Kai wasn't He Yuan's Black Ink disciple. However, this relationship was truly significant. Since Gui Liao had his eyes on his black ink disciple, it would suggest that he had no regard for He Yuan at all. This issue could be small or big. It might not be worth mentioning as Yang Kai's life was not at stake. Nevertheless, if He Yuan felt insulted, it would mean that Gui Liao had crossed the line by offending his superior. Gui Liao wouldn't be able to bear the wrath if the territory lord blamed him. It would have been all right if Gui Liao could secretly settle the matter. From his standpoint, he believed that a newcomer like Yang Kai wouldn't dare to resist as it wouldn't matter to lose a bit of world force. However, he hadn't expected the other party to be so obstinate and defiant. While remaining silent, Gui Liao felt his brow twitching. Yang Kai asked, "Sir, don't you want to know how he tarnishes your reputation?" It had come to a point where Gui Liao had to get to the bottom of it in front of everyone. Otherwise, he would only appear guilty, so he replied with a nod, "Speak." Despite his casual look, Gui Liao's eyes were filled with murderous intent. Seemingly oblivious to this, Yang Kai proclaimed loudly, "Before Sir Territory Lord entered the black ink nest, he had told you to get a profound in-spirit fruit for me. I've been waiting for days, but there hasn't been any news about it. I initially wanted to ask you about this. However, since you were not around, I could only look for Lu Ziyan. By leveraging his position as your black ink disciple, this guy demanded a lot of resources from me. He said that as long as I could satisfy his demands, he would put in a good word for me in front of you so that I could get the profound in-spirit fruit sooner. He even said that." At this point, he seemed hesitant to continue. "What else did he say?" Gui Liao gritted his teeth. Yang Kai went on to say, "He even said that those demands were not for himself but for you, Sir Gui Liao. It was Sir Territory Lord who told you to get me a profound in-spirit fruit, so I'm sure that you wouldn't be negligent about it. Why would I need his help to begin with? Moreover, it's not like a black ink disciple like him can affect what you do." After I exposed his lies, he became furious out of shame and started a fight with me. "Please stand up for me, sir." A dumbfounded Lu Ziyan gazed at Yang Kai with widened eyes. Lu Ziyan hadn't expected Yang Kai to spout such nonsense, and his upright attitude made it look like it was really what had happened. So he quickly refuted, "That's not true." A calm Yang Kai turned to look at him. "It's not true? Why don't you tell everyone why we fought then, Brother Lu? It's not like a newcomer like me would ask for trouble by offending you for no reason." Lu Ziyan snapped. "It's because—" Yang Kai stared fixedly at him. "Go on." Lu Ziyan was rendered speechless. The demand he had mentioned to Yang Kai on this day couldn't be exposed in public. After all, this was just his speculation of Gui Liao's intention. If it was exposed, Gui Liao would be humiliated. As his black ink disciple, Lu Ziyan wouldn't dare to bring trouble to his master. Yang Kai promptly said, "See? He can't say anything. Sir Gui Liao, the truth is right before our eyes. It's not that I wanted to get into a conflict with him. Instead, he was the one who went too far. Please stand up for me, sir." Gui Liao stared fixedly at him for a moment, then turned to glare at Lu Ziyan. "Waste!" Lu Ziyan was unable to say anything despite feeling aggrieved. He felt apprehensive and terrified as Gui Liao reprimanded him. It all happened because of Yang Kai, but he could only keep the resentment in his heart for the time being and try to get his revenge in the future. Regardless of the cause of the conflict, you two, as black ink disciples, shouldn't have gotten into a fight in Sir Territory Lord's castle and caused so much damage. Both of you have to be punished. Lu Ziyan replied in a shaking voice, "Yes, that will be 3 world spheres from you." Lu Ziyan's face instantly turned pale as he pleaded with Gui Liao. "Sir, if you dare to say anything more, it will be 5 world spheres." Gui Liao snorted. Lu Ziyan instantly kept his mouth shut, but his expression was evidently furious and aggrieved. "As for you," Gui Liao gave Yang Kai a dispassionate look, "it will be 1 world sphere." Even though Yang Kai had no idea what the punishment was, he knew that it was definitely terrible. That was the reason Lu Ziyan turned pale upon hearing it. Yang Kai then cupped his fist. "Sir Gui Liao, I'm the victim." "You're the victim?" Gui Liao sneered. "There's a saying you humans like to use, it takes 2 hands to clap, Both of you are in the wrong for what has happened today. I'm sure Sir Territory Lord will be fine with how I handle this matter. What's wrong? Are you unwilling? Of course I'm unwilling. Yang Kai gritted his teeth for a moment before saying, I'll accept this punishment then. Gui Liao stared at him for a while before nodding. You're quite good. Many thanks for the compliment, sir. Yang Kai replied unenthusiastically. Enough, enough. Go back to your own places. Gui Liao waved his hand and chastised the feudal lords around him. It was then that the feudal lords left. Seeing that Gui Liao was about to leave, Yang Kai called out to him, Sir, when will you give me the profound in-spirit fruit as promised by Sir Territory Lord? Without turning his head, Gui Liao replied, Just wait. I'll give it to you when I find one. He soon disappeared, but he never said when he would find the fruit. Yang Kai reckoned that after he kicked up a fuss this time, he wouldn't be able to get a profound in-spirit fruit in short order. Nevertheless, he didn't regret his decision. There was no way he would agree to opening up his small universe and letting Gui Liao feed on his world force. With that said, he had to get his hands on a profound in-spirit fruit quickly. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to explain himself when his small universe was fully repaired by the World Tree clone. When he felt a resentful glare on him, Yang Kai turned around and saw Lu Ziyan glowering at him. He sneered before striding off. Lu Ziyan was so enraged that he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. After the battle, not only was he defeated by his opponent, but he was also punished by Gui Liao. Besides that, his residence was also destroyed. Could be said that he had suffered immense losses. On the other hand, Yang Kai had received a much lighter punishment. There was no way Lu Ziyan could tolerate this. Nevertheless, Yang Kai wasn't interested in responding to him. This black ink disciple could never be saved, but he didn't feel like killing him either, so he could only let him perish on his own. Not long after Yang Kai returned to his room, a high-rank black ink clansman came over and passed him a world sphere. After saying that it was Gui Liao's order, he left. Certainly, Yang Kai had seen world spheres before. When he was Nuyan's subordinate in the past, that guy would bring him to different territories to fight against other black ink disciples. The black ink coins he earned would be used to buy world spheres so that he could cultivate. Nuyan had a dream, which was to earn enough black ink coins and head to Black Ink Nest to ascend to become a feudal lord. However, before he could realize his dream, he was killed by Feng Ying. To black ink clansmen, world spheres were cultivation resources, and every piece was costly. The average clansman couldn't afford one. If not for the fact that Yang Kai was powerful enough to win every life and death gambling match he entered, Nuyan wouldn't have earned enough black ink coins to keep buying world spheres. Another black ink disciple of Nuyan's, D4, once told Yang Kai that the world force in the world spheres was basically collected from the battlefield. After Open Heaven Realm Masters passed away, their small universes would collapse, and their world force would dissipate. World spheres could be used to capture that leaking world force. However, Yang Kai felt that the explanation was unreasonable. Even though a lot of Open Heaven Realm Masters were killed on the battlefield, there shouldn't be enough world force that could fill world spheres to be sold to so many black ink clansmen. After asking about this, D4 told him that black ink disciples could also infuse their world force into the world spheres, which was actually the most common way for the black ink clansmen to create world spheres. Therefore, every black ink disciple was a valuable asset to their master. Black ink disciples were loyal and would never betray their master, and they could tag along when the master went to war. During their free time, black ink disciples could even make world spheres for the masters to cultivate with. As long as the black ink disciples were not killed, the masters would have an unlimited supply of world spheres. Back then, Nuyan had bought several empty world spheres and told D4 and the others to infuse their world force into them. However, Yang Kai was Nuyan's money tree, so he was spared from this task. He just had to continuously win battles in different arenas. When Yang Kai heard the punishment announced by Gui Liao, he didn't understand what that meant. However, when he saw this empty world sphere, he finally comprehended Gui Liao's intention. It was apparent that he was required to fill this world sphere with his world force. It took a long time to completely fill a world sphere, at least a few months given Yang Kai's 7th Order Open Heaven Realm strength. Not only was this time-consuming, but it would also exhaust his heritage. Certainly, Yang Kai wasn't willing to do such a thing. Why would he make a world sphere for Gue Liao when the latter wasn't even willing to give him a profound in-spirit fruit? Nevertheless, since he had offended Gue Liao, life would be hard for him in the future. At the very least, before He Yuan left the Black Ink Nest years later, he had to be cautious so that Gue Liao wouldn't have a reason to punish him. Moreover, he had to come up with a way to complete his true objective, which was to find out the artifact refining Grandmaster's identity and whereabouts. Having said that, the most pressing issue for him was to obtain a profound in-spirit fruit. Since he couldn't pin his hopes on Gue Liao, he had to look for a different way to achieve his goal. After giving it a thought, Yang Kai rose from the chair and left his room. It was business as usual inside the castle. The passing Black Ink clansmen would look curiously at him. After all, they had never seen a new Black Ink disciple who had the guts to get into a fight in the castle. Yang Kai randomly caught a Black Ink clansman and asked, "Do you know where Xiagu lives?" The Black Ink clansman was puzzled. Who is that? Even though Xiagu was a feudal lord, there were many feudal lords in He Yuan's territory. Naturally, the Black Ink clansmen in the castle couldn't possibly know all the feudal lords. Yang Kai didn't give up though and kept asking around. After asking more than a dozen Black Ink clansmen the same question, he finally got some clues. He found a Black Ink clansman who knew a little about Xiagu. He had no idea where he lived exactly, but he told Yang Kai to look for him in a particular area in the territory. A feudal lord like Xiagu would generally look for a place outside of the city to establish their own home. This was permitted by He Yuan and the other territory lords. However, if one was incapable of acquiring a Black Ink nest, he wouldn't really have a territory to his name. After thanking him, Yang Kai shuffled in that direction. No one stopped him along the way. It seemed that after the incident earlier, Gue Liao wasn't ready to complicate the matter. The universe fragment that was as large as a universe world was directly owned by He Yuan, and the surrounding region occupied by his subordinate feudal lords was also considered his territory. The location of the Black Ink nest and the castle were the center of the universe fragment. It could be considered the most prosperous place in the universe fragment. Flying was not prohibited in the city, so after leaving the castle, Yang Kai directly shot into the sky where he met a lot of passing Black Ink clansmen. When the Black Ink clansmen detected his human, they looked curiously at him. However, no one made things difficult for him or had their eyes on him. After all, he was a 7th Order Open Heaven Realm Master, so not just any Black Ink clansman could capture him. Soon, Yang Kai left this big city. After flying a few hundred kilometers, he saw a manor below him. He speculated that it was a feudal lord's territory. Without hesitation, he descended towards the manor, not hiding his aura. Before he even landed, a burly figure shot out from somewhere of the manor and came to him. He soon stopped in front of Yang Kai and examined him. With a surprised expression, he asked, "A 7th Order Black Ink disciple?" There were only a small number of 7th Order Black Ink disciples on this universe fragment, and he had met most of them before, but he wasn't aware of Yang Kai's existence, which made him feel curious. "I'm sorry for disturbing you." Yang Kai cupped his fist. "Sir, do you know where Sir Xiagu lives?" Instead of answering his question, the feudal lord asked, "Whose Black Ink disciple are you? Why are you here?" Yang Kai replied politely, "I'm Sir Territory Lord's Black Ink disciple. Sir Gue Liao told me to look for Xiagu as there's a matter he has to discuss with him." Upon learning about his identity, the feudal lord said, "So, you're the new Black Ink disciple that Sir Territory Lord has taken on. It's no wonder I had never seen you before." Upon hearing that, Yang Kai asked curiously, "Does everyone know about it now?" The feudal lord chuckled. "It's only natural to pay attention to Sir Territory Lord's affairs." Upon hearing the reason behind it, Yang Kai nodded. "I see." The feudal lord's expression turned milder after he found out that Yang Kai was He Yuan's Black Ink disciple, and he replied, "If you're looking for Xiagu, just head in that direction. According to human measurements, he lives in a place that is 3,000 kilometers away from here." After looking in the same direction, Yang Kai cupped his fist. "Many thanks." He then bid the feudal lord farewell and shot in that direction. It took him a short moment to move across 3,000 kilometers. From afar, Yang Kai could see a castle that was similar to He Yuan's that was built on an island. There were no traces of other Black Ink clan estates within a 100-kilometer radius. If he wasn't mistaken, this should be Jia Gu's residence. Yang Kai landed in front of the castle and activated his divine sense. There were a lot of Black Ink clansmen inside, but they were all insignificant low-rank Black Ink clansmen, with high-rank Black Ink clansmen being quite rare. There was an aura that Yang Kai was familiar with in the deepest part of the castle. Jia Gu. Upon confirming that the other party really resided here, Yang Kai called out, "Brother Jia Gu!" In an instant, all the Black Ink clansmen in the castle were shocked as they looked in the same direction. Jia Gu, who was recuperating, was alerted as he opened his eyes and stared out. A moment later, the gates were opened as Jia Gu stepped out of the castle and looked at Yang Kai with surprise. "Why are you here?" Yang Kai cupped his fist and smiled. "I've come all the way here to visit you, Brother Jia Gu. I hope I haven't bothered you." Jia Gu nodded. "Come in first." After entering the castle, they arrived at a room and took seats. "Has Sir Territory Lord issued any orders?" Jia Gu asked. He reckoned that a Black Ink disciple usually wouldn't dare to come all the way here on his own. Yang Kai probably had received a secret order from the Territory Lord. However, Yang Kai shook his head. "Sir Territory Lord has not shown up since he entered the Black Ink nest. I heard that it would take him several years to recuperate." Jia Gu was evidently relieved upon learning that it wasn't He Yuan who told Yang Kai to look for him. "The reason I've come here to visit you is that I need your help." Yang Kai expressed his purpose for the visit. Jia Gu frowned. "What can I help you with?" Although Yang Kai was a Black Ink disciple treasured by He Yuan, he was still a Black Ink disciple. Jia Gu was willing to be on good terms with him, but he wouldn't fawn over him, so he would of course find out what help Yang Kai needed before he would make a decision. Yang Kai let out a sigh and went on to say, "I'd like to ask you if there is a way I can earn money in Black Ink clan's territory." "Earn money?" Jia Gu was surprised. "Indeed." Yang Kai coughed. "You know, when human soldiers go to war, we don't bring a lot of resources with us. I was enlightened by Sir Territory Lord not long ago, so I only have a few resources with me. Now that my small universe is damaged, I need a profound spirit fruit to repair it, and I need resources to cultivate as well. However, since Sir Territory Lord is recuperating in the Black Ink nest, I have no means to purchase anything. I can neither repair my small universe nor cultivate in this state." A puzzled Jia Gu asked, "Profound spirit fruit?" Before Sir Territory Lord started recuperating, he told Sir Gue Liao to get one for you. Given Sir Gue Liao's status, it shouldn't be hard for him to get a profound spirit fruit. Perhaps? Yang Kai nodded. "However, I've offended Sir Gue Liao, so he doesn't seem willing to give it to me now." Jia Gu was shocked upon hearing that. "You offended Sir Gue Liao? What happened?" A helpless Yang Kai told Jia Gu about what had happened between Lu Zian and him. Jia Gu gazed at him with a weird expression. "You offended Sir Gue Liao just because of that?" He seemed to think that it was fine to agree to Gue Liao's demand, so he didn't understand why Yang Kai turned him down. Yang Kai spread his palms. "You're also aware that I sacrificed a part of my small universe twice in the recent battle. My strength has plunged because of the damage to my foundation, so if I still let Sir Gue Liao feed on my small universe, my order might drop. When that happens, I will become useless to Sir Territory Lord. By then, I will most likely be discarded." "You have a point," Jia Gu nodded. "So, I had no choice but to disappoint Sir Gue Liao. However, since that is the case, I can't hope to get a profound spirit fruit from him." Jia Gu frowned. "I don't think so. He wouldn't dare to disobey Sir Territory Lord's order, but you might need to wait a little longer." Yang Kai internally cried that he couldn't possibly wait. The World Tree clone was continuously repairing his small universe, so if he couldn't obtain a profound spirit fruit to cover up this process, he would be exposed. Jia Gu placated him by saying, "Don't worry. Before Sir Territory Lord leaves the Black Ink nest, Sir Gue Liao will get you a profound spirit fruit." Yang Kai shook his head. "I'd rather come up with a way to get a profound spirit fruit myself. I suppose the fruits are for sale in the city." Jia Gu replied, Yes, but they've always been expensive. They cost a lot of black ink coins. That's why I've come here to ask for a way to make money. Can you enlighten me, Brother Xiaogu? Yang Kai looked humbly at him. Xiaogu fell into a dilemma. Since such an incident had happened, he would offend Gue Liao by lending Yang Kai a hand, and this was obviously not worth it just to help a mere black ink disciple. Moreover, he didn't know any way he could make money. Even if he did, he wouldn't want to share it with Yang Kai. As Yang Kai observed his expression, he said, "Don't worry, Brother Xiaogu. If there's a proper way that allows me to earn black ink coins, I'll not forget your assistance and properly compensate you." Xiaogu appeared tempted at the prospect of making a profit, so after giving it a thought, he said, "Given your situation, there's indeed a way." Yang Kai's eyes brightened. "Oh? What is it?" Xiaogu said, "Do you know world spheres? I can give you some money to buy some empty world spheres, then you can infuse your world force into them and sell them. Each world sphere will earn you a lot of black ink coins. Just by selling 10 world spheres, you'll have enough money to buy a profound in-spirit fruit." Yang Kai's brow twitched as he hadn't expected Xiaogu to mention this method, so he shook his head. "Please stop pulling my leg, Brother Xiaogu. I can't even cultivate now, so how am I supposed to infuse my world force into the world spheres? If I do that, I'll definitely see my order regress." "You have a point. I suppose this is what your humans call killing the goose that lays the golden eggs." Yang Kai thought that this guy had misused the idiom, but he didn't bother to correct him and simply said, "I heard that there's a blood arena in the city. You want to engage in a life-or-death fight with others?" Xiaogu instantly realized his intention. Yang Kai nodded. "However, I'll need a black ink clansman to bring me there. Taking everything into consideration, I think that you're the most suitable person to help me with it. If you can go there and bet against the others, I'll not disappoint you. When the time comes, I'll share half the profit with you." Xiaogu shook his head. "That's indeed a good way, but it won't work for you." "Why not?" Yang Kai was perplexed. Xiaogu explained, "Since it's a life-or-death fight, both parties have to be equally matched. You are a 7th Order Master, so there are no suitable opponents for you in the blood arena. The black ink disciples there are all below the 7th Order." After giving it a thought, Yang Kai realized that he really hadn't seen any 7th Order Open Heaven Realm Masters fighting in the blood arenas when he followed Nu Yen around. He soon realized the reasons behind this. First of all, the battle between two 7th Order Masters would be too destructive. Secondly, there were only a small number of 7th Order Black Ink disciples. Since they were rare, the Black Ink clansmen wouldn't let them go to the blood arena and put their lives at risk. Even though Yang Kai's idea was not feasible, he was well prepared. He then let out a sigh. "It seems that I have no choice but to make use of my hobby." Xiaogu asked curiously, "Hobby? What do you mean?" Yang Kai explained, "I realized this some time ago on the battlefield. It seems that Black Ink clansmen rarely use artifacts to fight. Even feudal lords don't use artifacts, let alone the high-rank and low-rank clansmen. It seems that you all are used to fighting with humans using only black ink strength and secret techniques." Xiaogu nodded. "To us, black ink strength is the source of our powers, just like world force is to humans. Although we're physically stronger than humans, we know nothing about the Tao of artifact refining. The artifacts we have were all snatched from humans or refined by black ink disciples, so they're quite rare. However, most artifacts we snatch from the humans are not suitable for us to use." Yang Kai asked, "Do you have your own artifact, Brother Xiaogu?" Xiaogu shook his head. "I once used a sword I obtained from a human, but that thing's grade was too low, and it didn't suit me. I threw it away after using it a couple times." After pondering on it for a moment, Yang Kai reckoned that given Xiaogu's size, it would be akin to holding a knife for him when he grabbed a human sword. The weapon wouldn't be useful for him on the battlefield. With his brow arched, Yang Kai asked, "What if I refined an artifact that was tailored to you?" Xiaogu was startled for a moment. "You know how to make artifacts?" "I know a thing or two." "You really know how to refine artifacts?" Xiaogu was astounded. "Are you what the humans call an artifact refiner?" Yang Kai put on a faint smile. I supposed I could be considered an artifact refiner. Xiaogu sized him up while feeling doubtful. Is that what you mean when you said you wanted to monetize your hobby? Yes. Yang Kai frowned. Don't you believe me, brother Xiaogu? Xiaogu shook his head. It's not that I don't believe you. I'm just surprised that you're an artifact refiner. Humans are always highly protective of their artifact refiners. Why did you appear on the battlefield? Yang Kai explained. Artifact refining really is just a hobby for me, so I haven't spent a lot of time practicing it. In fact, not many humans are aware that I'm an artifact refiner, as I haven't made anything since I ascended to the open heaven realm. However, I should still be able to make some simple artifacts. He then leaned forward and spoke in a tempting voice. Do you want to give it a try, brother Xiaogu? With a suitable artifact, you'll be more powerful on the battlefield. Certainly, Xiaogu couldn't resist such a temptation, so he rose from the chair and declared, Come with me. Yang Kai followed Xiaogu to the deepest part of the castle. After they descended nearly 3 kilometers, they arrived at a huge cave where hot air blew right at their faces. As Yang Kai lifted his head and was surprised by what he saw, that was because there was natural earth fire in his underground cave. The omnipresent hot air billowed from that earth fire. In this cave, there were some traces of restrictions set up by humans, and the entire cave was covered with a grand array. The center of the grand array was where the earth fire gathered. There were also some miscellaneous materials strewn around the cave. It seemed that many of the materials had been used here before. Yang Kai frowned with a puzzled expression. Xiaogu shuffled towards the center of the grand array. His aura seemed to have triggered the grand array's power, and the earth fire, which was hot enough to melt metal, came right at him. Ignoring it, Xiaogu covered his hand with black ink strength and extended it into the earth fire. When he retracted his hand from the earth fire, he was holding something. He walked away from the center of the grand array and passed the thing to Yang Kai. Look at this. Yang Kai took it with both hands and instantly felt a hefty weight. Even with his strength, his arms still sank slightly, which went to show how heavy this thing was. It was a giant halberd that was about 15 meters in length and as thick as a human leg. This giant halberd looked awkward in Yang Kai's hands, but it did suit Xiaogu's size quite well. Yang Kai examined the giant halberd in shock. As he scanned it with his divine sense, he soon realized something. Was this created by a human artifact refiner? He then turned to look at Xiaogu in astonishment. Where did you get it? Given his eyesight, he could see that even though this giant halberd was made by a human artifact refiner, it wasn't fully refined. It was more like a half-finished prototype. This kind of weapon wouldn't be useful on the battlefield, as any open heaven realm master could easily destroy it. I used to have a black ink disciple who knew a little about artifact refining. He spent a lot of time and resources creating this thing for me. Yang Kai was stunned, as he hadn't expected that to be the story behind it. It was because of his suggestion that I decided to build my estate here. This place has an earth fire he needed for artifact refining so that he could make full use of his skills. Unfortunately, before he could finish refining this thing, he left behind a setup and told me to nurture this thing in the earth fire. He said that perhaps it would be usable after 100 years or so. Upon hearing that, Yang Kai shook his head. It's useless. Since the foundation isn't solid, it's pointless to keep nourishing it. Xiaogu arched his brow. What do you mean? Yang Kai explained. I have no idea what kind of achievements your former black ink disciple had in the Tao of artifact refining, but this thing looks mediocre to me. The foundation of this artifact has been set, so even if it is nurtured for 100 years, you will only obtain a low-rank artifact. Xiaogu's eyes brightened. Are you saying that you're more skillful than he was in artifact refining? Yang Kai put on a proud smile. Indeed. An agitated Xiaogu asked. If you were to refine it, what do you think you can make out of it? After a moment of deliberation, Yang Kai replied, the artifacts used by humans are categorized into low, mid, and high, which correspond to the ranks of the open heaven realm. People who can make high-rank artifacts are called artifact refining grandmasters. My artifact refining skills are average, so I'm far from being a grandmaster. Nevertheless, It won't be hard for me to make mid-rank artifacts. Xianxia had spent 10 years learning artifact refining, and the one who taught him was Chai Hao, who came from Divine Cauldron Cave Heaven. Chai Gao was the sixth disciple of Dongguo and Ping, and even though he wasn't as skillful as a great grandmaster like Dongguo and Ping, he was still a grandmaster. With such a person as a teacher, anyone would grow a lot regardless of how terrible their aptitude was. Moreover, there were many similarities between artifact refining and the alchemic Tao. Additionally, Xianxia was a 7th-order Open Heaven Realm Master with outstanding strength and aptitude. During the 10 years he had spent learning artifact refining from Chai Hao, his skills improved greatly. Now, his Tao of artifact refining had reached the 3rd level of comprehension, taking the initial steps. However, due to the limit of his aptitude in this Tao, it was destined that Xianxia wouldn't achieve great things in artifact refining. Perhaps he would be able to refine high-rank artifacts one day if he kept improving his skills, which would make him a grandmaster. Nevertheless, that would be the limit he could never break through in his lifetime. He could never become a great grandmaster like Dongguo and Ping. As Xianxia had learned from a grandmaster from Divine Cauldron Cave Heaven, regardless of his level of artifact refining now, his vision was much sharper than that of the average artifact refiner. He could clearly see the weaknesses in this giant halberd. He hadn't expected that Xiaogu had a subordinate who was an artifact refiner in the past. Nevertheless, judging from the way this giant halberd was made, it was safe to assume that the artifact refiner who refined it was not very accomplished in this Tao, and since he wasn't around, he had probably lost his life on the battlefield. Fortunately, the artifact refiner had at least built a setup to allow the giant halberd to be nourished in the earth fire, so it was possible that Xiaogu could obtain a low-rank artifact in 100 years. Nonetheless, as a feudal lord, it would be of no help to him to use a low-rank artifact in combat. Meanwhile, Xiaogu became increasingly excited. "You must not lie to me." Xianxia tiled his head and asked, "Why would I lie to you?" "Prove it to me, then. Make me an artifact based on this one here. I'll provide all the materials you need. If you succeed, I'll give you a reward." "Fair enough." Xianxia directly agreed to it. This was the reason he had come all the way here in the first place, but he hadn't expected that things would go so smoothly. Moreover, there was already an environment that an artifact refiner needed. Could be said that Xianxia had acquired the inheritance left behind by Xiaogu's former black ink disciple. As he felt the giant halberd with his hands and examined it, Xianxia commented, "It would be wasteful to create an entirely new weapon. Although this thing is a bit shoddy, and its form has been finalized, the materials used are precious. I just need to enhance it. What do you need?" "I'll prepare them for you," Xiaogu asked, high-spirited. Xianxia replied, "Just get me some cultivation materials." "You only need those things?" Xiaogu was surprised. Xianxia nodded. This wasn't difficult. Xiaogu fished out a space ring and passed it to Xianxia. "Do you think these are enough?" After taking it, Xianxia realized that there were a lot of open heaven pills and several sets of 5th-order and 6th-order materials. The origins of these 5th-order and 6th-order materials were untraceable. However, only humans could refine open heaven pills, and they were only useful to humans. It was apparent that Xiaogu had acquired these pills from the battlefield. Judging from the number of open heaven pills in this ring, Xianxia reckoned that Xiaogu had killed quite a lot of human soldiers. While forcing himself to remain calm, Xianxia put away the space ring and examined the grand array in this cave. He then turned to Xiaogu. "Where's the array plate that's used to control this grand array?" Xiaogu landed a slap on his own forehead. "Right?" Upon finishing his words, he tossed an array plate at Xianxia, who took it and started refining it. It wasn't difficult to refine this thing, so it only took Xianxia a dozen breaths to finish. With this token in possession, he had full control over the grand array in this place. With the help of the earth fire in this place, he would achieve twice the results with only half the effort. When everything was prepared, Xianxia extended his hand and summoned out a glittering silver hammer. This nameless hammer was given to him by Chai Hao. It was used by Chai Hao when he was younger, but it fell into disuse after his skills improved and he acquired a better one. If not for the fact that Xianxia was somewhat talented in the Tao of artifact refining, and that he was eager to learn, Chai Hao wouldn't have given this sentimental hammer to him. Although this thing was no longer useful to Chai Hao, it was a symbol of his growth that carried special meaning with it. While it was useless to Chai Hao, it was precious to Yang Kai, and given his level of artifact refining, he could only utilize a small part of its full potential. It was also pointless for him to use better tools as he couldn't bring out their strength with his low comprehension. Yang Kai gently jabbed the hefty giant halberd into the ground so that it stood straight. Zha Gu could see that Yang Kai raised the hammer in his hands and forcefully struck the giant halberd. The moment the hammer was lifted, the earth fire in the cave madly streamed into the hammer, making the tool glow red. A deafening clang was then heard. A strike of such intensity should have destroyed the entire cave. But what was strange was that all the force stayed within the giant halberd without any of it escaping from the weapon. This was apparently because Yang Kai had full control over his strength, allowing him to put all of it to use. Zha Gu arched his brow at the sight. For all intents and purposes, a feudal lord was equivalent to a seventh-order human master. However, Zha Gu reckoned that he didn't have such precise control over his strength. This went to show the vast difference in power between Yang Kai and himself, and he reckoned that it was no wonder Yang Kai was able to kill so many Black Ink clansmen on his own. However, what he saw made him feel puzzled. In the past, he had observed from the side when his Black Ink disciple created some artifacts. Although he knew nothing about the Tao of artifact refining, he could see that the way his Black Ink disciple refined artifacts had a certain beauty and abstrusity to it. On the other hand, Yang Kai's approach was brutal and blunt. It was as though he was just striking with all his might. While Zha Gu was perplexed, he heard another clang the next instant. A series of clangs were continuously heard, and each time Yang Kai wielded the hammer, he seemed to be using all of his strength. The intervals between the strikes were precise, and every time he lifted the hammer, the earth fire in the grand array would be drawn into it, causing it to burn. There were 81 strikes in total as Yang Kai hammered the giant halberd from the tip of its blade to the butt of his shaft. Initially, Zha Gu hadn't noticed anything, but as time passed, he could feel that the prototypical giant halberd was going through a kind of transformation. However, the transformation was so vague that he wasn't even sure if he was seeing an illusion. After 81 strikes, Yang Kai's aura had become a bit unstable. He then stored the hammer and sat down with his legs crossed before stuffing a handful of open heaven pills into his mouth. Zha Gu knew that Yang Kai's strength had plummeted as a result of the damage to his small universe, so he didn't dare to disturb him as the latter must be exhausted from all the hammering. It wasn't until a few days later that Yang Kai's aura stabilized and he opened his eyes. Zha Gu took a step forward and imitated the humans by cupping his fist. "Many thanks, Brother Yang." Yang Kai put on a smile. "Don't mention it, Brother Zha Gu. Since you trusted me, I naturally wouldn't disappoint you." A puzzled Zha Gu asked, "I watched my Black Ink disciple refine artifacts before, but the way he did so was different from you. Why is that?" Yang Kai replied with a smile, "There are many methods of artifact refining in the human world, and each sect has their own distinct artifact refining techniques. I have no idea which sect your Black Ink disciple belonged to, but my method is named Thousand Tempering Art. It's from a very ancient sect in the human world, and it's a time-tested method." Upon hearing his explanation, Zha Gu nodded. "I see. Yang Kai wasn't just talking nonsense. The method he used to enhance the giant halberd was indeed named Thousand Tempering Art. This kind of technique was especially suitable for refining offensive and defensive artifacts. Even in Divine Cauldron Cave Heaven, only people who held important positions had the right to cultivate it. Yang Kai learned artifact refining from Chai Hao, and with Dongguo and Ping and Zhongliang giving the order, Chai Hao naturally wouldn't hide anything from him. Yang Kai followed up by saying, "Don't worry about it, Brother Zha Gu. You'll understand the result when the weapon is fully refined." Zha Gu nodded repeatedly. "I certainly trust you, Brother Yang." "I'll continue, then," Yang Kai said, then got to his feet and lifted the hammer. As he activated his power to draw on the earth fire, he repeatedly struck the giant halberd with all his might. What Zha Gu saw was only the surface. Every time Yang Kai struck the giant halberd, he not only activated his power to draw on the earth fire, but also refined the weapon's internal structure. Yang Kai was imbuing the giant halberd with his own strength each time his hammer struck, purifying and tempering it from the inside out. Day after day, deafening clangs were continuously heard coming from the cave. Yang Kai's movements alternated between fast and slow. Sometimes he would be gentle with the strikes, as though he was just tapping on the weapon, but sometimes he would strike it rapidly and loudly as a series of clangs were heard in quick succession. He also had to rest from time to time. Initially, Xiaogu watched from the side with excitement, but he soon lost patience as time passed. Furthermore, he was injured in the previous battle and hadn't recovered, so he needed time to recuperate. Hence, he would only come over and have a look at the giant halberd every half a month. Each time he did so, he would realize that the weapon had gone through a conspicuous transformation. 3 months later, when Xiaogu came over again, he saw that Yang Kai was seated on the ground with his legs crossed, a shiny giant halberd standing straight in front of him. This giant halberd was already much thinner than the original one, though the length remained the same. However, Xiaogu could feel that this weapon radiated an imposing aura. If the initial giant halberd was like a pearl that was covered in dust, then this one radiated a dazzling glow after the dust was removed. Xiaogu's breathing became rapid. As he stepped forward, he grabbed the giant halberd and lifted it off the ground. After holding it in his grip, he realized that the weight, length, and thickness of the weapon perfectly matched his build and strength. It was as though the weapon was custom-made for him. There were some abstruse patterns on the shaft of the weapon, and as he infused black ink strength into it, the giant halberd started humming and growling like an awakened beast. The complicated patterns were able to amplify the power of his black ink strength. He couldn't help but put on a bright smile. Even though the Black Ink clan had black ink strength to rely on, and they were physically more robust than the humans, they were incapable of studying artifact refining. They had suffered immense losses during the battles because of the artifacts used by the humans. Humans had all sorts of artifacts that could strike them in the most unexpected ways. As the two races clashed, a lot of Black Ink clansmen were killed by the artifacts that the humans used. If the Black Ink clan were able to make artifacts, the humans would have been destroyed by now. However, even a feudal lord like him found it hard to get an artifact that was useful to him. This couldn't be helped, as the artifacts snatched from the humans were not suitable for him. Although he had a Black Ink disciple who knew a thing or two about artifact refining in the past, that disciple's skills were mediocre. It never crossed his mind that he would obtain such a weapon on this day. With this artifact in his hands, Xiaogu could feel that his combat power had increased by 20%. The increase might not be much, but it might save his life and turn a battle around at a critical moment. Furthermore, with such a giant halberd in his possession, he could easily deal a heavy blow to his enemies even without activating his power. He could already imagine how imposing he would be when he next went to war. It seems that you're pleased with this artifact, Brother Xiaogu. Yang Kai was suddenly heard saying. When Xiaogu turned his head, he saw that Yang Kai had opened his eyes and was smiling at him. Yes, I couldn't be happier with it, Xiaogu guffawed. Is this thing fully refined? Yang Kai replied, it was your Black Ink disciple who created this thing. All I did was enhance it. This is already the best I can do with my skills. Is this considered a mid-rank artifact? Xiaogu asked. Yes. Yang Kai nodded. Given his eyesight, he reckoned that this giant halberd could be considered a mid-rank artifact. It was still far from being a high-rank artifact. However, it was already a wonderful weapon for Xiaogu, which was why he was elated. You have some incredible skills in artifact refining, Brother Yang. Xiaogu praised him liberally. The outcome of the artifact refining sessions suggested that Yang Kai was significantly more skillful than his former Black Ink disciple. After all, his Black Ink disciple had spent many years and resources, but he only managed to create a rough prototype. Many thanks for your compliment, Yang Kai replied humbly. After examining the giant halberd in his hands, Xiaogu carefully stored it and glanced at Yang Kai. I said that if you're able to fulfill my demand, I would give you a reward. Why don't you tell me what you want? I'll get it for you as long as I'm able to. Yang Kai broke into laughter. Don't you know what I want, Brother Xiaogu? Xiaogu was startled upon hearing that, but he soon realized what the other man meant. Got it. However, a profound in-spirit fruit is quite costly. Even if I sell all of my assets, I might not be able to afford one. Xianxia said, if you can help me buy a profound in-spirit fruit, I'll refine an artifact armor for you. The quality will be just as good as this giant halberd. Xiaogu fell silent for a moment. He couldn't help feeling tempted when he envisioned himself wearing an artifact armor and holding the giant halberd on the battlefield. So he soon nodded, "Deal." Xianxia added, "You'll have to provide all the materials for making the artifact armor, though. Of course. When will I get the profound in-spirit fruit? I'll get it for you within 3 days." Upon finishing his words, Xiaogu turned around and left. It was apparent that he was trying to come up with a way to buy a profound in-spirit fruit. Even though he was just a feudal lord, he had accumulated some funds over the years, so in truth, it wouldn't be hard for him to purchase a profound in-spirit fruit. After he was gone, Xianxia let out a breath. His most pressing problem had been solved as he had secured a profound in-spirit fruit. After he was done making artifacts for Xiaogu, he hoped to spread the news that he was skillful in artifact refining. That way, he would be able to move on to the next stage of his plan when He Yuan was done recuperating. Xiaogu was indeed a man of his word, and just 3 days later, he returned to the cave and passed a wooden box to Xianxia. After taking the box, Xianxia opened it and saw a profound in-spirit fruit inside. "Many thanks, brother Xiaogu." Xianxia cupped his fist. Xiaogu waved his hand. "There's no need to thank me for fulfilling a deal. You should quickly refine this profound in-spirit fruit and repair your small universe." "That's what I thought as well. I'll not disturb you for now. Just notify me when you're ready." Xianxia nodded. Xiaogu then turned around and left the place. It wasn't until Xiaogu was out of sight that Xianxia fished out the profound in-spirit fruit. Even though the World Tree clone was continuously repairing his small universe, and there were already some results, the progress was quite slow. He didn't have so much time to spare, and with the help of this profound in-spirit fruit, he reckoned that his small universe would recover much more quickly. Without hesitation, he stuffed the profound in-spirit fruit into his mouth and started refining it. Soon, a warm stream of energy rose from his stomach and penetrated his small universe. As the medicinal efficacies of the profound in-spirit fruit circulated, the damaged part in his small universe was being repaired at an incredible pace. The average cultivator wouldn't experience such a rapid result after ingesting this spirit fruit. The reason Xianxia's small universe could heal quickly was that he also had the help of the World Tree's clone. Even so, it still took him 3 months to finish. The moment his small universe became complete again, Xianxia felt his aura surging. He was overwhelmed with a sense of ecstasy. The damage to his small universe made him feel as if something was missing. Be it activating his power or cultivating, he had been greatly affected. Now that his small universe was complete again, the sense of discomfort had faded away. In the battle against Lu Zi and previously, even though he managed to gain the upper hand, it took him quite some time and effort to defeat the other party. If he were to fight against Lu Zi and now, Xianxia had the confidence to subdue him in just a few moves. Although the damage to his small universe had been repaired, the loss of heritage from sacrificing pieces of his small universe had to be made up slowly. There was no rush to do so though, as the cultivation of an open heaven realm master was all about accumulation over the long term. Xianxia's speed of refining materials was already much greater than that of an average 7th order open heaven realm master, and the living beings in his small universe continuously strengthened his heritage, so he would still be able to ascend to the 8th order at an unimaginable speed. Only by ascending to the 8th order would he be considered an important piece on the Black Ink battlefield. Meanwhile, the 9th order open heaven realm masters were the pillars of strength in their respective great passes. After examining himself and confirming that there was no problem, Xianxia activated his divine sense. Soon, Xiaogu's burly figure came into sight as he gazed at him in shock. "You've recovered?" He could feel that Xianxia was different now. In the past, he always had a feeling that Xianxia was somehow incomplete, but that feeling was now gone. It suggested his small universe had been fully repaired. "Many thanks for your assistance, brother Xiaogu." Xianxia cupped his fist. Xiaogu waved his hand. "Don't mention it, brother Yang. You deserved that spirit fruit. Xianxia said, now that my small universe is fully repaired, I can start refining an artifact armor for you. Are you ready? Xiaogu replied, I've prepared some materials, but I'm not sure if they're enough. Have a look. Upon finishing his words, he fished out a space ring. After taking it, Xianxia looked into it with his divine sense and realized that there were many precious items inside, mainly rare resources and ores. Is it enough? I can get more materials if you want, Xiaogu asked fervently. It's enough. Xianxia put away the space ring. I'll start refining the artifact armor for you immediately. While I'm working, I would prefer not to be disturbed. I'll inform you when it's complete. After agreeing, Xiaogu left. When Xianxia was learning the Tao of artifact refining in Blue Sky Pass, he had made some artifact armors. However, they were subpar items in Chai Hao's opinion. After all, they were not refined well enough for combat use. They would be putting the human soldiers' lives at risk by letting them wear such artifact armor and going to war. Although such artifacts were not good enough for humans, they would be invaluable to the Black Ink clan. Therefore, Xianxia didn't have to produce a high-quality artifact. He just had to make sure that the artifact armor was as good as the giant halberd. Given his mastery in artifact refining now, he had the confidence to achieve this. It took him 3 months to enhance the giant halberd. However, it only took him 2 months to create an artifact armor from scratch. There were 2 reasons why it took him a shorter time. First of all, his small universe had been fully repaired, so he had better control over his own power. Secondly, during the process of artifact refining, his skills had also improved significantly. Although he had spent 10 years studying artifact refining in Blue Sky Pass, it wasn't enough time for Xianxia to really hone his skills. It required a much longer period of work and experience for anyone to become a master in artifact refining. During the 10 years of training, Chai Hao had taught Xianxia everything he knew about the Tao of artifact refining until there was nothing else he could teach him. Of course, this did not mean that Xianxia was already on par with Chai Hao when it came to his mastery of artifact refining. It would take a person hundreds, if not thousands of years of studying and practicing artifact refining in order to become a grandmaster like Chai Hao. However, Chai Hao was no longer able to teach him anything else. For Xianxia had already grasped all the theoretical knowledge that was passed down to him. As for how far he would go in the Tao of artifact refining, that would depend on his own efforts and opportunities. Growth could only be achieved by continuously practicing artifact refining. Therefore, when Xianxia got around to refining this artifact armor, his mastery of artifact refining was already much better than before, and after he was done, his skills improved again. The quality of the artifact armor he had made was obviously higher than that of the giant halberd, and the glow radiating from the armor suggested that the artifact was quite extraordinary. He then released his divine sense to inform Xiaogu about it. Upon his arrival, Xiaogu eagerly put on the artifact armor and realized that it perfectly fit him. The artifact armor covered his vital parts like the chest, abdomen, and back very well. More importantly, it made him look even more imposing than normal. He was evidently elated. With the artifact armor and the giant halberd in possession, Xiaogu felt that his combat capabilities had increased by 30 to 40%. When he was in a one-on-one fight against a 7th Order Open Heaven Realm Master in the past, he wouldn't be a match for them. However, with these 2 artifacts in possession, he believed that he could easily defeat any average 7th Order human now. It was the first time he realized that the artifacts made by humans could increase a person's strength so tremendously, and his emotions undulated. On the battlefield, the humans were able to activate the powers of artifacts while the Black Ink clan could only fight with their fists. It was no wonder that the Black Ink clan would always suffer huge losses in each battle, even those that they eventually won. It was because they didn't have any artifacts with them, while practically all humans had 1 or 2 artifacts on them. If the Black Ink clan could be equipped with these artifacts, they would be able to destroy the human race with ease. Are you satisfied with it, Brother Xiaogu? Xianxia suddenly asked. I couldn't be happier. Xiaogu nodded repeatedly, grinning from ear to ear. I'm glad that I haven't disappointed you. Xianxia got to his feet. Since I have finished it, I'll take my leave. Xiaogu was astounded. Where are you going? Xianxia replied. Well, I'm going back to Sir Territory Lord's castle. It's been quite some time since I left the castle. I came all the way here to get a profound in-spirit fruit, and since my goal has been achieved, and I've helped you make 2 artifacts, it's time I went back. There's no hurry to leave. Xiaogu quickly stopped him. A puzzled Yangkai gazed at him and asked, "Is there anything else, Brother Xiaogu?" After hesitating for a moment, Xiaogu replied, "Brother Yang, just some time ago you asked me how you could make money. I've given it a thought, and I think there's a good opportunity now." Yang Kai broke into laughter. "Are you going to tell me that I can earn money by helping other Black Ink clansmen refine artifacts?" "Yes." Xiaogu nodded with a solemn expression. "There's no doubt that you're skilled in artifact refining, and if you refine artifacts for other Black Ink clansmen, you'll be able to earn a lot of Black Ink coins. Wasn't that your initial intention?" Yang Kai waved his hand. "The reason I helped you make artifacts was that I wanted to get a profound in-spirit fruit. Now that my small universe is complete, there's no reason for me to keep doing it. It takes a lot of time and energy to refine artifacts, and I would prefer to focus on the martial Dao so that I'll be useful to Sir Territory Lord when I go to battle with him." Xiaogu shook his head. "That's not right, Brother Yang. By cultivating, you're just increasing your own power. However, if you can make artifacts for the Black Ink clan, you'll help lots of people grow stronger, and that will help Sir Territory Lord as well. I'm sure he'd be more than willing to see you refine artifacts for the Black Ink clan. You have a point, but, Brother Yang, you need resources to cultivate, right? However, do you have any of such resources with you now?" Yang Kai parted his lips as he seemed to be lost for words. A moment later, he replied dejectedly, "I don't." "See." Xiaogu appeared sincere. "Humans always say that one must sharpen their tools before they get to work. In order to cultivate, you need to buy a lot of resources, but what can you do without any Black Ink coins? By refining artifacts for others, you'll be rewarded handsomely." The corner of Yang Kai's mouth twitched. "You're indeed knowledgeable, Brother Xiaogu. You seem familiar with many sayings humans use." Xiaogu replied with a smile. "I learned those sayings from my previous Black Ink disciple. In any case, I've been sincere with you, and I don't intend to harm you in any way." "I know." Yang Kai scowled and fell into his thoughts. Xiaogu said, "What's there to consider? If you're willing to refine artifacts for others, I'll do all the heavy lifting for you. I'm friends with a lot of feudal lords, so I'm sure they're interested in getting their own artifacts." Yang Kai replied hesitantly, "It's been a long time since I left the castle. If I don't go back, I'm worried that Sir Gue Liao will punish me." Xiaogu said, "You're Sir Territory Lord's Black Ink disciple. Since he's not around, no one else can boss you around, including Sir Gue Liao." "Well," Yang Kai appeared tempted. "If I listen to you and help those feudal lords make artifacts while they provide all the materials, how much should I charge them?" Xiaogu instantly replied, "You'll be able to charge 10,000 Black Ink coins for each artifact." His prompt reply suggested that he had been pondering on this issue for quite some time. Yang Kai was secretly shocked by Xiaogu's greed. Xiaogu might think that he didn't know the purchasing power of Black Ink coins, but when he stayed by Nu Yan's side in the past, he already gained some understanding of the value of Black Ink coins. According to his estimation, if there was a conversation rate between Black Ink coins and Open Heaven pills, one Black Ink coin would be worth 10,000 Open Heaven pills. In other words, 10,000 Black Ink coins would be worth 100 million Open Heaven pills, which was about enough to purchase a full set of sixth-order materials. Of course, this was only a rough estimate as no one had ever used Black Ink coins to trade for Open Heaven pills before, but the conversion rate should be around there. A set of sixth-order materials obviously didn't matter to Yang Kai, but it was a lot of money for a feudal lord who didn't own his own estate. Despite knowing this full well, Yang Kai pretended to know nothing and asked, "What can I buy with 10,000 Black Ink coins?" Xiaogu replied in a serious tone, "A set of sixth-order materials." Yang Kai gasped as he appeared astonished. Xiaogu persuaded him by saying, "It's a great business idea. You just have to make a few artifacts for others, and you won't have to worry about getting resources anymore." Yang Kai instantly made a decision. It's indeed a viable business. Upon successfully persuading the other man, Xiaogu guffawed. "Have you agreed to it, then?" Yang Kai nodded. Why wouldn't I agree to such a great business idea? However, in order to refine artifacts, I'll need to use the earth fire here. Also, Brother Xiagu will have to help me contact those feudal lords. It wouldn't be appropriate for a black ink disciple like me to directly contact them. Don't worry. I'll handle everything for you. Xiagu appeared ready to make this business a success. Yang Kai was certainly aware of the other man's intentions, so he nodded. Good. We can split the profits evenly from selling the artifacts. Xiagu was shocked upon hearing that. No, that's too much. You're the one doing all the hard work, and the earth fire is practically inexhaustible. I don't deserve 50% of the profit. I'll just take 30% of it. Yang Kai was startled as it was the first time he saw someone not wanting to earn more when it was offered to them. Nevertheless, he wouldn't waste time persuading him, so he nodded and said, In that case, do we have an agreement? We do. Xiagu nodded firmly. They smiled at each other as they were ready to make a lot of money. Since an agreement had been reached, Xiagu immediately got to work. After telling Yang Kai to get some rest in the castle, he ordered his subordinates to spread out in various different directions. 3 days later, while Yang Kai was cultivating, he felt the aura of a feudal lord approaching. The person soon arrived and landed in front of Xiagu's castle. Then, Xiagu's subordinate led him inside. The arrival of this feudal lord was just the beginning. In the following half a month, more and more feudal lords came over. Yang Kai did some calculations and realized there were more than 10 feudal lords present now. It seemed that Xiagu was on good terms with quite a number of feudal lords. More than 10 feudal lords were led to the reception hall in the castle and were seated. Xiagu took the head seat and had some small talk with all of them. The feudal lords here were all familiar with each other. After all, they lived in He Yuan's territory, so they had come into contact with one another before. They were naturally curious about why Xiagu suddenly invited them to this place, and even after a brief chat, no one knew of the reason. When Xiagu was asked about it, he just acted mysterious by smiling in silence. It wasn't until the last feudal lord arrived and took his seat in the grand hall that Xiagu gently clapped his hands to attract everyone's attention. Then, he rose from the chair and said with a smile, I'm sure you're all curious about why I've invited you over. The simple. I want to show you 2 items. A feudal lord, whose figure was especially burly, asked impatiently, What items are you talking about? Another feudal lord, who had wings on his back, said, Xiagu, stop stalling and get on with it. We have no time to waste. Upon hearing that, Xiagu put on a smile. See for yourselves. As he spoke, he stepped forward. By the time he finished speaking, he was already standing in the center of the grand hall. In front of everyone's eyes, he extended his hand into the void and pulled out a giant halberd that was 15 meters long. At the same time, he took off his shirt and revealed an artifact armor that covered the upper half of his body. The artifact armor and the giant halberd radiated a dazzling glow, which went to show that they were no ordinary artifacts. More importantly, the artifact armor and the giant halberd seemed to be custom-made for Xiagu as they fit him perfectly. Clad in a piece of armor and holding a halberd, Xiagu looked quite imposing. He appeared especially outstanding among these feudal lords. They were all instantly attracted to him with shocked expressions. Given these feudal lords' eyesight, they could see that both the giant halberd and the artifact armor were no ordinary artifacts. They were undoubtedly made by a skilled human artifact refiner. While remaining on the spot, Xiagu looked around and was pleased with their reactions. In fact, if he hadn't known the background of these 2 artifacts, he would have sported the same expression if he saw a feudal lord who possessed them. The burly feudal lord who spoke earlier was so shocked that he stood straight up and walked up to Xiagu. After examining the artifacts, he knocked on the artifact armor and nodded lightly. Astounding. This thing can withstand an all-out attack from me. Xiagu flashed a smile at him. This is truly a life-saving treasure if it can take an all-out strike from someone whose power is equivalent to a feudal lord. Since it could bear an all-out strike from a feudal lord, it could also save the wearer from a 7th-order human's all-out attack. The feudal lord said in a bitter tone, You're so lucky to acquire these things. It seemed that you got quite some benefits from following Sir Territory Lord to the battlefield previously. Xiaogu said, "Do you think I obtained these things from the battlefield?" The feudal lord asked with surprise. "Didn't you?" Xiaogu put on a faint smile. "You're fully aware of the average size of humans, aren't you? How could I have possibly gotten these things from them?" The burly feudal lord was startled for a moment, but after giving it a thought, he realized that Xiaogu was right. Even though there were some slight differences between the humans when it came to their sizes, they were all petite in the Black Ink clan's eyes. Both the giant halberd and the artifact armor obviously didn't belong to humans. They must have been custom-made for Xiaogu. Even if another Black Ink clansman got his hands on these two artifacts, he would have a hard time using them if his size was too different from Xiaogu's. Another feudal lord thought of something as he asked excitedly, "Xiaogu, where did you get these artifacts from?" He had hit the nail on the head. Xiaogu turned to look at the feudal lord and decided to stop keeping them on tenterhooks. He said with a smile, "I asked someone to specifically refine these artifacts for me." "What? You asked someone to make these artifacts for you? A human artifact refiner?" All of them were flabbergasted. The feudal lord with wings gave it a thought and said, "Previously, the royal lord gave an order that all Black Ink disciples who were proficient in artifact refining were to be brought to the royal city. Where did you find a human artifact refiner to help you make these artifacts?" "That's right. Moreover, these artifacts appear quite extraordinary. The human artifact refiner who is able to make these things must be a great master. Such a Black Ink disciple should have headed to the royal city long ago." "Did you visit the royal city?" Xiaogu shook his head. "I certainly didn't go to the royal city, and even if I did, I couldn't possibly interfere with the royal lord's plan." The royal lord had indeed summoned all the Black Ink disciples who were skillful in artifact refining. But what if this human artifact refiner arrived at a later time? "What do you mean?" Xiaogu went on to say, "The Black Ink disciple that Sir Territory Lord recently brought back is an artifact refiner." "Him? I heard that this Black Ink disciple was pretty bold. Just because he's a Black Ink disciple serving Sir Territory Lord, he offended Sir Gue Liao back at the main castle. He left after that, and no one knows where he went." Xiaogu said with a smile, "I was beside Sir Territory Lord when he corrupted that human. On our way back I had a chat with that Black Ink disciple, so it could be said that we're on good terms. That human came to my place after leaving the castle. As for his grudges with Sir Gue Liao, I'm sure all of you are aware of Sir Gue Liao's hobby. That human's small universe was damaged seriously in the last battle, so if he gave in to Sir Gue Liao's demand, his order would have regressed. That was why he left in fury and came to my place." The feudal lords nodded. They were aware of Gue Liao's hobby. In fact, some of them had this hobby as well, so they could relate to Gue Liao. A feudal lord asked, "He's an artifact refiner?" "The halberd I hold and the artifact armor I wear were refined by him." "He's indeed an artifact refiner, and a good one at that." "Where is he?" another feudal lord asked agitatedly. The giant halberd and artifact armor in Xiaogu's possession were indeed extraordinary. They certainly wanted something similar. Xiaogu replied with a smile, "He's still in my place. Tell him to see us. I want him to make artifacts for me." The other feudal lords agreed with him. Xiaogu grinned. "The reason I've invited all of you to come here is to help you get the artifacts you want. Be it a weapon or an artifact armor, you can place any order. However, go on." Xiaogu went on to say, "That Black Ink disciple is a newcomer with no valuable items or resources on him. He certainly doesn't have Black Ink coins to purchase resources either. Therefore, he can help you refine artifacts, but you have to pay him a reasonable fee." The feudal lord with wings snapped. "He should be honored that we're here to tell him to make artifacts for us. How dare he demand a fee from us?" A glint flashed through the burly feudal lord's eyes. "Xiaogu, I guess it's you who wants the fee, not that human." Xiaogu replied solemnly, "He'll be the one making the artifacts, while I'm just acting as a middleman. The money will be given to him. However, since he's promised to share a part of the profit with me, I naturally wouldn't turn him down." A feudal lord snorted. I knew that a black ink disciple wouldn't be so audacious. Xiaogu refuted impassively. That black ink disciple was personally corrupted by Sir Territory Lord, so he's different from the other black ink disciples. He doesn't even have any regard for Sir Guiliao. Does any one of you think you're more powerful than Sir Guiliao? They had heard about what happened in the castle. After all, the battle between Yang Kai and Lu Zi and raised such a fuss that it couldn't be hidden. Upon hearing Xiaogu's words, these feudal lords were unable to refute him. In fact, he was right to say that since the black ink disciple didn't even have any regard for Guiliao, it would be useless for them to try to force him to refine artifacts for them. After all, he was the Territory Lord's black ink disciple, so they wouldn't dare to cross the line. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to explain themselves when He Yuan was done recuperating. Brothers, with such artifacts in your possession, your attack and defense capabilities would be greatly enhanced. They could potentially save your life on the battlefield. Such treasures are hard to come by. So what's there to hesitate over when you're able to get them now? What are a few black ink coins compared to your life? Many feudal lords die on the battlefield, and once they do, their black ink coins become useless. To be honest with you, I spent my entire fortune in order to refine these artifacts. He wasn't lying, for he had indeed spent all of his money. Nevertheless, the cost included the black ink coins he had spent to get Yang Kai a profound in-spirit fruit. A feudal lord suddenly said, "It's no wonder that you borrowed some money from me recently." Xiaogu turned to look at that feudal lord. "If you want an artifact, I'll give you a 20% discount, and your order will be prioritized." The feudal lord nodded lightly. Xiaogu's sales tactics were effective. Just like he had said, it was hard for them to get their hands on useful artifacts. Now that there was a chance, they wouldn't want to miss it. The reason they were furious was that a black ink disciple had the guts to charge them a fee for his services. However, any fee would be worth it if they could earn greater merits and preserve their life on the battlefield. Another feudal lord asked, "How much will that black ink disciple charge?" Xiaogu directly replied, "You have to provide all the materials, and each artifact costs 20,000 black ink coins." "What? 20,000 black ink coins? Why don't you just rob us instead? Are you messing with us?" Xiaogu. These feudal lords were infuriated. It had to be noted that 20,000 black ink coins was a huge sum to them. Even though most of them were able to fork out 20,000 black ink coins, that could only buy them one artifact. If they wanted two, that would cost 40,000. These feudal lords served He Yuan Territory Lord, which meant they were not powerful enough to have their own independent territories and were thus not very wealthy. By forking out 40,000 black ink coins and paying for all the materials, all their savings would be gone. Faced with their wrath, Xiaogu just smiled in silence. He knew that regardless of how furious these feudal lords were, they would ultimately agree, for there were no black ink disciples who could help them refine artifacts. Even if there were such black ink disciples in the past, these feudal lords didn't have the right to get artifacts from those human artifact refiners. Xiaogu told Yang Kai that they would charge 10,000 black ink coins for every artifact, which was a hefty price in the latter's opinion. However, Xiaogu directly doubled the price in front of these feudal lords. His intentions were obvious. Otherwise, he wouldn't have tried so hard to make it happen. He naturally wasn't willing to do anything that wouldn't bring him any benefits. This way, for every artifact that was crafted, he only had to give Yang Kai 7,000 black ink coins according to their agreement. On the other hand, he would be able to pocket 13,000 black ink coins. He would earn more than Yang Kai, who was the one actually making the artifacts. He already realized that it was a great business opportunity when Yang Kai made the artifacts for him. As a feudal lord, he naturally yearned for his own territory. However, that would require a lot of black ink coins. Although he had taken part in countless life and death fights on the battlefield before, he still hadn't accumulated enough wealth. If he could make good use of this opportunity, his dream would come true. A feudal lord with his own territory was totally different from those that had no territories. The boisterous feudal lords in the Grand Hall were furious at the fact that Xiaogu demanded such an unbearably high price, but an unfazed Xiaogu shuffled towards his own seat and said calmly, "Each of you is only allowed to get one artifact." Upon hearing that, all of them fell silent. A feudal lord frowned. What do you mean by that, Xiagu? Xiagu replied with a smile. Just as I said. The feudal lords exchanged glances as they had no idea why Xiagu came up with such a restriction. Every artifact would earn him 20,000 black ink coins, so he should be more than happy to get more orders for making more artifacts. Why would he limit how much he could earn? Xiagu swept a glance over them with a solemn expression. Do all of you think he can keep on making artifacts for you forever? The feudal lord with wings on his back thought of something as his expression changed. You mean? He then pointed towards the ceiling. Xiagu nodded gently. More than 10 years ago, the royal lord suddenly summoned all the human artifact refiners to the royal city. All the black ink disciples who know anything about artifact refining have been gathered up. I'm sure you're aware that I used to have a black ink disciple who was an artifact refiner, though he was not very skillful. Despite his lack of aptitude, even he was summoned. We have all heard rumors about what is going on in the royal city, that it is a project that will secure the Black Ink clan's future. So not even the slightest negligence is allowed. Black Ink disciples who know a little about artifact refining have all been summoned, so how could Yang Kai, who is an expert in artifact refining, be exempted? The reason he's still free now is that the news hasn't spread. Moreover, Sir Territory Lord is still recuperating. If my speculation is correct, when Sir Territory Lord is done recovering and finds out that Yang Kai is an artifact refiner, he will send him to the royal city to take part in that project. When that time comes, no one will be able to help you make artifacts no matter how many black ink coins you have. Everything he had said was reasonable and well known, so the feudal lords nodded in agreement. Upon realizing the situation they were faced with, those who were not willing to pay 20,000 black ink coins were caught in a dilemma. If Yang Kai was sent to the royal city, there would no longer be an artifact refiner who could make artifacts for them. Just then, a feudal lord asked, Xiagu, how long does it take for him to make an artifact? About 2 to 3 months, Xiagu replied and swept a glance over them. There are more than 10 of you here. In other words, we can ensure that every one of you will get an artifact before Sir Territory Lord is done recuperating. That's why I've come up with this restriction. Certainly, no one knows for sure when Sir Territory Lord will leave the Black Ink nest. If he comes out sooner than expected, some of you might not get your artifacts. Upon hearing that, an impetuous feudal lord shouted, I'll pay 20,000 then. I want an artifact. Following that, another feudal lord said, I'll buy one as well. In an instant, the feudal lords in the grand hall scrambled to place an order. Xiagu slowly dealt with them with a smile. After everything was settled, he told these feudal lords to start preparing materials and black ink coins. Then he personally saw them off. He was pleased to see them leaving in a hurry. Barely 2 hours later, a feudal lord returned and brought with him sufficient materials and 20,000 black ink coins. After taking the materials and black ink coins, Xiagu headed to the cave and told Yang Kai about the feudal lord's size and requests. Yang Kai memorized them, and after Xiagu left, he started making the artifact. Over the following days, Yang Kai stayed in the cave and focused on refining artifacts. He didn't have to worry about cultivation resources as Xiagu would prepare everything for him. He just had to craft the artifacts according to the feudal lord's demands. For every artifact made, Xiagu would give him 7,000 black ink coins. As Yang Kai refined artifacts day after day, his skills in artifact refining improved rapidly. At first, it took him 2 months to make an artifact armor for Xiagu, but 2 years later, it would only take him 45 days to create such an artifact, and its quality would be higher as well. However, he had only been making huge offensive artifacts. No one ordered an artifact armor. It seemed that Black Ink clansmen were fond of offensive artifacts but not interested in artifact armors that could potentially save their lives. Over the past 2 years, Yang Kai managed to craft about 20 artifacts. As time passed, more and more feudal lords found out about Yang Kai's ability to refine artifacts through word of mouth. An increasing number of feudal lords came over to place an order, and the fee for refining an artifact rose to 30,000 black ink coins per piece. It wasn't until this moment that the first batch of feudal lords invited to Xiagu's castle got over the bitter feeling. They even thought that they had picked up a bargain for their own artifact. As for the actual fee, Xianxia knew nothing as he focused on refining artifacts in the cave. Even if he found out about it, he wouldn't be bothered. Everything he was doing was to better position himself to carry out his mission. Since more and more feudal lords asked him to create artifacts for them, it suggested that more people were becoming aware of his ability. That would allow him to have a higher chance of achieving his goal. His skills in artifact refining had improved significantly compared to 2 years ago, and even though he was far from being a grandmaster, he could be considered a great master. Great master, grandmaster, and great grandmaster were the different ranks of artifact refining. Although there wasn't a systematic classification, such ranks were universally acknowledged. Only those who were able to make high-rank artifacts could be regarded as grandmasters. Now, Xianxia could only create mid-rank artifacts, so he was just a great master. He was now just waiting for He Yuan to leave the black ink nest. After making some calculations, he reckoned that this would probably happen in a few years. Inside He Yuan's castle, a feudal lord respectfully left the main hall while Guiliao sported a solemn expression. He summoned this feudal lord because he had some routine business with him, but he was surprised to learn a piece of shocking news. The black ink disciple named Xianxia was actually an artifact refiner, and a skillful one at that. Guiliao was truly astonished. After the battle between Xianxia and Lu Ziyan, he respectively punished them. He thought that by using the profound spirit fruit as a threat, Xianxia would soon make a concession. However, that guy simply went missing for the past 2 years. This matter didn't really bother Guiliao. As the territory lord's black ink disciple, Xianxia couldn't possibly have gone far and must be hiding somewhere on the universe fragment and recuperating. Perhaps he was waiting for the territory lord to come out of the black ink nest to stand up for him. That was what Guiliao originally thought. So he never expected that Xianxia had gone to Jia Gu's place and started refining artifacts for the feudal lords. He was shocked when he learned this. The other feudal lords might not be aware of how valuable a human artifact refiner was. However, as He Yuan's confidant Guiliao was, the royal lord was carrying out a grand plan that would affect the entire Black Ink clan's future. And it had something to do with human artifact refiners. It could be said that every artifact refiner was an invaluable asset to the royal lord and were thus regarded quite highly. A human artifact refiner was no longer just any ordinary black ink disciple. In that case, despite Guiliao's noble identity, he couldn't possibly oppress Xianxia. Otherwise, He Yuan would punish him when he exited the black ink nest. However, Guiliao couldn't apologize. As a noble feudal lord, he wouldn't give in to a black ink disciple no matter what. After giving it a thought, he called out, "Lu Ziyan!" Lu Ziyan stepped out from the darkness. "Master, go to Jia Gu's place and tell him to come over." "Yes," Lu Ziyan replied. Barely 4 hours later, Jia Gu appeared before Guiliao and saluted him. Then, he asked respectfully, "Is there something you want me to do for you, Sir Guiliao?" Guiliao stared fixedly at him. "Jia Gu, I heard that you've earned quite a lot of black ink coins recently." Jia Gu was startled for a moment, but he soon pulled himself together and put on a fawning smile. "You found out about it, Sir Guiliao?" He knew that this matter couldn't be hidden from Guiliao, and he had already expected it to get out at some point. Guiliao snorted. "Before Sir Territory Lord entered the black ink nest, he told me to manage the affairs in his territory. Since such an incident has happened, how could I possibly not be aware of it? How dare you, Jia Gu? Since that black ink disciple is an artifact refiner, why didn't you inform me immediately and instead hid him away in your place to make artifacts for others?" Jia Gu slightly bent his back. "Sir Guiliao, that human is Sir Territory Lord's black ink disciple after all. Since he wants to stay in my place, I can't possibly chase him away." Guiliao sneered. "You just aren't willing to let him go, are you? You're charging 30,000 black ink coins for an artifact. It would take you dozens, if not hundreds of years to earn that much money." Jia Gu forced a smile. "Please understand my situation, Sir Guiliao. How much do you give that human?" Guiliao asked. After hesitating for a while, Jia Gu replied, "I told him that we'll charge 10,000 black ink coins per artifact, and I would get 30%. "You're really something," Guiliao mocked. He's the one doing all the work, but he only gets 7,000 black ink coins for each piece while you get 20 to 30,000. You've been treating him well, haven't you? Aren't you worried that when he finds out about it, he'll file a complaint against you in front of Sir Territory Lord? Zha Gu turned pale. I suppose Sir Territory Lord won't bother dealing with such a small matter. Gui Liao replied calmly. Who knows? After all, Sir Territory Lord regards him quite highly. Zha Gu instantly became apprehensive upon hearing Gui Liao's words. Over the past 2 years, the amount of black ink coins he had earned off of Yang Kai was significantly more than what he could possibly make in his lifetime. With so much wealth in his possession now, he naturally wouldn't want to give it up. However, just like what Gui Liao had said, if Yang Kai found out about it and filed a complaint with the Territory Lord after the latter left the black ink nest, Zha Gu would be doomed. Although he believed that the Territory Lord wouldn't care about such a trivial matter, Yang Kai's identity was special after all. Not only was he a human artifact refiner, he had also gained the Territory Lord's favor. What if the Territory Lord was willing to stand up for him? An anxious Zha Gu gazed at Gui Liao. Sir Gui Liao, do you think I should give all the money back to him? Gui Liao sneered. Without directly answering his question, he asked, Zha Gu, how long have you been a feudal lord? Even though Zha Gu had no idea why the other man suddenly asked about it, he still replied honestly, I've been a feudal lord for 3,000 years. You've been stuck as a feudal lord for 3,000. Have you ever thought about ascending to become a territory lord? Zha Gu said solemnly, it is every feudal lord's dream to become a territory lord one day. However, there's never been an opportunity for me. Just like open heaven realm masters, accumulation was key to a black ink clansman's cultivation. However, humans could refine all sorts of cultivation materials while that wasn't possible for the Black Ink clan. There were 2 ways Black Ink clansmen could grow their strength. First, they could absorb world force and convert it into their own Black Ink strength. Secondly, they could directly absorb Black Ink strength produced in Black Ink nests to enhance their powers. The omnipresent Black Ink strength in He Yuan's territory was born from the Black Ink nest, and every Black Ink clansman could absorb it freely. Black Ink strength in this place was like world energy in the 3,000 worlds. However, there were innumerable Black Ink clansmen living in this territory, and everyone was absorbing and refining the ambient Black Ink strength. With so many people sharing the Black Ink strength, Zha Gu wouldn't be able to absorb a lot of it to strengthen himself regardless of how hard he tried. An opportunity, huh? Gui Liao smiled. Sir Territory Lord once said that we shouldn't wait for opportunities to come to us. We have to create them for ourselves. Suddenly realizing something, Zha Gu looked fervently at him. Sir Gui Liao, you mean? Gui Liao stared fixedly at him and changed the topic by saying, do you want your own fief? Upon hearing that, Zha Gu felt his breathing becoming hurried. He instantly nodded. Of course I do. The reason I've been trying so hard to earn Black Ink coins is that I want to buy a subnest from Sir Territory Lord. However, he's recuperating now, and the Black Ink nest has been shut. Moreover, I don't have enough Black Ink coins. Although he had earned a lot of money by relying on Yang Kai to make artifacts, he had only amassed 300,000 Black Ink coins. This was a considerable sum of wealth for a feudal lord, as 300,000 Black Ink coins were worth about 3 billion open heaven pills. A feudal lord was equivalent to a 7th-order open heaven realm master, and there were rarely any 7th-order humans who possessed so much wealth. It was the same case for the Black Ink clan. In order to own a fief, not only did a Black Ink clansman have to become a feudal lord, but they also had to possess a Black Ink nest of their own. Only then would he have a right to apply for a fief from the Territory Lord. Nevertheless, the lowest rank Black Ink nest cost 500,000 Black Ink coins. The average Black Ink clansman would never be able to amass so much wealth in his lifetime. This was the reason there were so many feudal lords, but only a small number of them had their own fiefs. Although they were powerful enough, they didn't have sufficient finances to purchase a Black Ink nest. Once a feudal lord possessed his own Black Ink nest, it would be far more convenient for him to cultivate or recuperate when he was injured. For example, after Zha Gu returned from the battlefield, even though he was wounded, he was unable to enter the Black Ink nest to recuperate as the Territory Lord had shut it. He could only go back to his own castle and wait for his wounds to heal slowly. However, if he had his own black ink nest, he would recover far more quickly. By owning his own black ink nest, he could also cultivate inside it and increase his strength rapidly so that he would stand a much better chance of becoming a territory lord. There were many benefits to owning a black ink nest. One such benefit was that he would have his own fief, which could attract a lot of lower-rank black ink clansmen to settle in his territory. If high-rank black ink clansmen wanted to ascend to become feudal lords, they would have to get the help of his black ink nest's power. By doing so, they would have to pay him a fee. That would bring him a steady source of income. Besides that, he would also have the right to conscript the black ink clansmen living in his fief when war broke out. By then, he could establish his own army to fight against the humans. If he made a contribution on the battlefield, he would be rewarded handsomely. Feudal lords with their own fiefs were very different from those who didn't have their own fiefs. It was Xiaogu's dream to have his own black ink nest and fief, and he had been working hard to achieve it. When Guiliao asked him such a question all of a sudden, he couldn't help but fall into his wild thoughts, as he secretly anticipated what the other man would say next. As expected, Guiliao said with a smile, "It's not hard for you to get your own fief. In fact, I can help you with that." Xiaogu felt his throat tightening as he asked agitatedly, "How are you going to help me, Sir Guiliao?" Guiliao replied, "You're strong enough, but you'll need 500,000 black ink coins to buy a subnest. How much money do you have now?" After hesitating for a moment, Xiaogu said meekly, 300,000. Guiliao nodded gently. "You need another 200,000. Then, it's fine. I can lend that much to you, and you can pay me back when you have the money in the future." Xiaogu said, "Even if there's enough black ink coins, the black ink nest is shut now. How am I supposed to get a subnest? I'll have to wait for the territory lords to come out." The black ink nests owned by the feudal lords were bred from the territory lord's black ink nest. The relationship between them was like that of a mother and her children. That was why the black ink nests owned by the feudal lords were called subnests. On the other hand, the black ink nests owned by the territory lords were bred from the royal lord's black ink nest. Similarly, they were the subnests of the royal lord's black ink nest. It required a lot of energy to breed a subnest from a black ink nest, so every subnest cost a substantial amount of black ink coins. It wouldn't be given to a feudal lord for free, with the exception of if he had made a massive contribution. Therefore, even though Guiliao was willing to lend Xiaogu some money, even the cleverest woman could not cook a meal without rice. Right then, Guiliao said, "I happen to have a subnest with me. I prepared it for myself back then. However, Sir Territory Lord has ordered me to help manage his territory and never lets me go. That's why the subnest is still unused. Now that I'm about to ascend to become a territory lord, the subnest is useless to me. I can sell it to you." What a coincidence! Xiaogu was both shocked and pleasantly surprised. Over the past 2 years, he had been exploiting Xianxia just to get enough money to purchase a subnest, but he hadn't managed to earn enough black ink coins even now. It never crossed his mind that not only was Guiliao willing to lend him some money, but he would also sell his subnest to him. Given his understanding of Guiliao, Xiaogu knew that the other man wasn't a kind-hearted person. Hence, while he was excited, he asked cautiously, "Is there a condition attached to this deal, Sir Guiliao?" Guiliao started chuckling. "I've always known that you're clever, Xiaogu. It seems that I was right about you. There's indeed a condition, but it won't harm you in any way. Please make it clear to me, Sir Guiliao." With a solemn expression, Guiliao said, "When you have your own fief, I want you to bring Xianxia to that place and make him continue refining artifacts. I can introduce some wealthy feudal lords to you who are much richer than your friends. Also, I will take half of the profit from the sale of these artifacts. Additionally, I want him to refine 2 artifacts for me first. 1 offensive artifact and 1 defensive artifact." Xiaogu thought that the other man was indeed greedy by demanding half of the profit. With that said, they could command a higher price from wealthier feudal lords. After all, just like him, the customers he introduced to Xianxia were feudal lords who didn't have their own fiefs. Feudal lords who relied on the territory lord to survive naturally were not affluent. As for making 2 artifacts for Guiliao first, that wasn't really an issue. After giving it a thought, Xiaogu asked, Sir Guiliao, how much do you think we should charge our new customers for artifacts? Instead of answering his question, Guiliao asked, what do you think? Xiaogu thought that the other man was a bit ridiculous for just throwing the question back at him, but despite what he thought, he still replied, I'm currently charging my existing customers 30,000 black ink coins per piece. As for the feudal lords that you know, why don't we charge them 50,000 per artifact? If they charged 50,000 per artifact, other than the 7,000 black ink coins that had to be given to Yang Kai, the remaining money would be equally split between Gue Liao and him. That way, he would still get 21,500 black ink coins. It was only slightly less than the 23,000 he was receiving now, which was the amount of money he could get by exploiting Yang Kai on his own. Furthermore, the deal would be worth it since he was able to get a fief and a black ink nest. 50,000 was a huge sum in his eyes. After all, when he demanded 30,000, many feudal lords were unwilling to pay for it. They would cross the line by asking for a higher price. 100,000, Gue Liao said coldly. What? Xiaogu thought that he had misheard him as he gazed at him in shock. 100,000. It's decided. Sir Gue Liao. Xiaogu couldn't help but call out, isn't this price somewhat exorbitant? Will those feudal lords be willing to pay such a price to get an artifact? Gue Liao sneered. Do not compare the feudal lords you know to my associates. They are all feudal lords who have their own fiefs. Do you think feudal lords who can afford to buy subnests are not wealthy enough? They're all eager to obtain artifacts made by human artifact refiners. However, since all the artifact refiners have been sent to the royal city, they aren't able to get their hands on them even if they want to. If there's someone who can refine artifacts for them, they'll even agree to paying more than 100,000. After all, they only have one life and they can always earn more black ink coins. After a pause, he went on to say, moreover, when Sir Territory Lord leaves the black ink nest, this business will naturally have to stop. He'll definitely send Yang Kai to the royal city, so if we don't seize this opportunity to earn more money now, there won't be such a chance again in the future. Don't worry, you just have to bring Yang Kai to your fief, and I'll introduce some customers to you. You just have to serve them. Since Gue Liao had said so, there was nothing Xiaogu could do about it other than nod in agreement. Gue Liao then asked, do you have any specific demands when it comes to your fief? After giving it a thought, Xiaogu replied, I don't have any specific demands really, but it seems that Yang Kai needs to rely on an external aid like Earthfire to refine artifacts. Do you have a recommendation for that, Sir Gue Liao? Upon hearing that, Gue Liao started going through his universe chart and a moment later, he left a mark somewhere and passed it to Xiaogu. There was originally a great sun in this area. Although the sun is dead now, it still has a great amount of residual power. Let's just make this place your fief. The power of the great sun is still much greater than an earth fire. In the meantime, Xiaogu was glancing at the universe chart. Upon locating the dead great sun, he nodded, good. Gue Liao then waved his hand, after which Lu Ziyan stepped out of the darkness with a unique-looking box in his hands. It wasn't certain what the box was made from as it didn't look like metal nor jade. It also wasn't certain what was inside the box. However, the moment Xiaogu saw the box, he became agitated and could not peel his eyes away. Gue Liao said with a smile, you have to keep this subnest in a safe place. I only have one subnest, so if you lose it, it will be gone for good. An excited Xiaogu took the box and thanked him repeatedly. This was the key to becoming a feudal lord with a fief, and it was also the thing he had always dreamed of getting. It never crossed his mind that he could easily obtain it on this day. Do you need me to teach you how to hatch it? Gue Liao asked. There's no need for that. Xiaogu shook his head. Suddenly recalling something, he said hesitantly, Sir, it requires a lot of resources or world force to hatch a black ink nest. A generous Gue Liao waved his hand. Just buy the resources with the 300,000 black ink coins you have. It should be enough to hatch a black ink nest. As for the 500,000 black ink coins required to buy this black ink nest, you can pay me back later. Many thanks, Sir Gue Liao. Xiaogu was grateful. Although he now owed Gui Liao 500,000 black ink coins, it was worth it for a feudal lord like him. He secretly made some calculations and realized that if what Gui Liao said could be achieved, he would get 46,500 black ink coins for every artifact. After making Yang Kai craft more than 11 artifacts, he would be able to pay off his debt. He couldn't help but think that it was easy to make money with a human artifact refiner with him. He also felt fortunate that Yang Kai and Gui Liao were on bad terms. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to earn so much cash. Gui Liao would have taken full control over this matter. Now, Gui Liao only assisted him in secret instead of taking matters into his own hands. He must be worried that the territory lord would investigate certain matters when he was done recuperating. Therefore, even though Zha Gu would earn even more money, he would also have to take some risks. Despite knowing all of that, Zha Gu still happily obliged. After leaving the castle, Zha Gu was still in a dazed state. He still couldn't believe that his dream had finally come true. The box that contained the subnest couldn't be kept inside a space ring. To the Black Ink clan, a black ink nest was also a living creature. Therefore, Zha Gu returned to his castle and carefully put the box in a safe place before touring around He Yuan's territory. He then spent his wealth by buying a lot of world spheres and materials of different orders. 300,000 black ink coins were soon used up. Despite that, the substantial amount of resources in his space ring made him feel at ease. While Zha Gu had gotten everything ready, Yang Kai was completing another artifact. After telling Yang Kai to get some rest, Zha Gu started dealing with the feudal lords who were there to have their artifacts crafted. Since he had come to an agreement with Gui Liao, he wasn't willing to keep wasting time here. After all, he could only charge these feudal lords 30,000 for one artifact, while Gui Liao promised that they would be able to charge 100,000 per artifact. Since there was a huge difference between the prices, Zha Gu naturally knew which one to choose. Certainly, the feudal lords were not pleased with this. However, Zha Gu said that Gui Liao had summoned Yang Kai back to the castle. With this being the case, there was nothing these feudal lords could do about it. After all, Yang Kai was the territory lord's black ink disciple, so it wasn't appropriate for him to keep staying in Zha Gu's abode. When everything was prepared, Zha Gu gathered all his subordinates together and led Yang Kai to navigate across the void. On the way to their destination, Yang Kai said worriedly, "Brother Zha Gu, it's inappropriate that I'm suddenly leaving without informing Sir Gui Liao about it." Zha Gu replied with a smile, "Don't worry about it, Brother Yang. I've informed Sir Gui Liao already, and he's aware that you've been staying in my place for the past 2 years. Did he say anything?" Zha Gu shook his head. "Sir Gui Liao is busy dealing with the affairs in the territory. He can't be bothered to handle such a trivial matter." Yang Kai nodded gently. "That's good." Then, he asked in puzzlement, "Where are we going?" An energetic Zha Gu replied, "We're going to my fief." Yang Kai nodded. Upon seeing the other man's lukewarm reaction, Zha Gu said with a smile, "Brother Yang, since you're a human, I suppose you have no idea how important a fief is to a black ink clansman." Yang Kai really had no idea about it. Although he had been staying by Nu Yan's side for 2 years in the Black Ink clan's hinterland in the past, the latter was just a high-rank clansman who was equivalent to a 6th-order human. Moreover, Nu Tan simply went from one blood arena to the next to earn black ink coins. Basically, Yang Kai knew little about the internal affairs of the Black Ink clan. In fact, even though the two races had been fighting against each other for millennia, the humans still didn't know much about the Black Ink clan. Yang Kai played along by saying, "Please enlighten me." There was a sense of pride on Zha Gu's face as he spoke. "Let me put it this way, Brother Yang. Only with a fief in possession will a feudal lord be considered a real feudal lord. The feudal lords who don't have a fief are like tigers without teeth." A puzzled Yang Kai said, "I don't get it." Zha Gu chuckled. "Since you're a human, it's expected that you don't get it. Do you know why there are so many feudal lords but only a small number of them have their own fiefs? Is it because there isn't enough land?" Yang Kai gave a random answer. In fact, he had pondered on this issue before, but he couldn't figure out the reason behind it. Since Zha Gu mentioned it all of a sudden, he reckoned that his doubt would be solved on this day. Upon hearing that, Zha Gu was startled for a moment before breaking into laughter. That's indeed one of the reasons. Sir Territory Lord has dozens of feudal lords working for him. If every feudal lord had their own fief, there wouldn't be enough land. Nevertheless, the main reason is the limited number of black ink nests. Black ink nests? Yang Kai arched his brow with surprise. What does it have to do with the black ink nests? Zha Gu explained. Although the humans have fought against the Black Ink clan for countless years, I guess you all still don't know that there are different ranks of black ink nests. You've seen Sir Territory Lord's black ink nest. Don't you think it's enormous and imposing? Yes. Yang Kai bowed his head. The black ink nests are the foundation of the Black Ink clan, and there are 3 ranks in total, which the Royal Lord's black ink nests, the Territory Lord's black ink nests, and the Feudal Lord's black ink nests. In the humans' terms, these black ink nests could be categorized into high rank, mid-rank, and low rank. Sir Territory Lord's black ink nest is mid-rank. You might think that it's splendid, but if you have the chance to see a Royal Lord's black ink nest, you'll realize that the one owned by Sir Territory Lord is quite petite. Yang Kai's expression changed as it was the first time he heard about this. He reckoned that the humans had no idea about such a categorization as well. With his brow raised, he asked, "So, a feudal lord's black ink nest would be considered low rank?" "Yes." Zha Gu nodded. "Every black ink nest is dependent on the higher rank one." "What do you mean by that?" Yang Kai frowned. Zha Gu explained with a smile. "A territory lord's black ink nest must be bred from the royal lord's black ink nest, while a feudal lord's black ink nest is always bred from a territory lord's black ink nest. Therefore, the feudal lord's black ink nest is a subnest of the territory lord's black ink nest, while a territory lord's black ink nest is a subnest of the royal lord's black ink nest. There's such a relationship between the black ink nests? Yang Kai was astonished, thinking that he had learned a great secret of the Black Ink clan today. In the past, the humans had some speculations about how the black ink nests were born, but they were never able to discern the truth. It wasn't until Yang Kai heard about it from Zha Gu that he realized a lower rank black ink nest was separated from a higher rank black ink nest. With a solemn expression, Zha Gu went on to say, "It requires a lot of energy for a subnest to be born, so each one is extremely precious. We won't be able to get it with ease." As he spoke, he patted the box in his arms. "I bought this subnest with 500,000 black ink coins." Yang Kai was flabbergasted. "That's a subnest?" Zha Gu had been carrying this box while on their way to their destination. Yang Kai could certainly see it. Although he was curious, he never asked what was inside the box. It wasn't until this moment that he realized it was a subnest. "Yes, it's a subnest." Zha Gu nodded seriously. "However, it hasn't been hatched. After it's hatched, it will be a real black ink nest. With that said, it will naturally be much smaller than Sir Territory Lord's black ink nest. After all, it's just a feudal lord black ink nest. With this black ink nest, though, I'll become a real feudal lord." As he spoke, he started envisioning the bright future ahead of him. "With my own black ink nest, I'll be able to attract more black ink clansmen to settle down in my fief. If those high-rank black ink clansmen want to ascend to become feudal lords, they'll have to rely on my black ink nest's power, and I can charge them a fee just to use it. When there are enough residents in the fief, I can form my own army and follow Sir Territory Lord to fight against the humans." Yang Kai was practically beside himself as it was the first time he found out that a black ink nest had to be hatched. Was it really a living creature? How was it hatched? He had seen a lot of feudal lord black ink nests, but they were all gigantic. Although a feudal lord black ink nest was not comparable to the one owned by a territory lord, it couldn't possibly be stuffed into a box. While feeling doubtful, he asked cautiously, "Brother Zha Gu, you said that if those high-rank black ink clansmen want to ascend to become a feudal lord, they would have to rely on your black ink nest. What if you want to ascend to become a territory lord?" Zha Gu replied, "I'll have to rely on the territory lord's black ink nest, which is the one owned by Sir Territory Lord. This black ink nest is not powerful enough to support my ascension." Yang Kai nodded upon hearing his explanation. In other words, a low-rank black ink nest could help a black ink clansman ascend to become a feudal lord, while a mid-rank black ink nest could help a feudal lord become a territory lord. However, only the high-rank black ink nest could help a territory lord ascend to become a royal lord. The different ranks of black ink nests were owned by black ink clansmen of varying statuses. It was a clear and simple system. After giving it a thought, Xianxia asked, "Can a subnest be born from a feudal lord black ink nest?" Xiagu shook his head with a smile. The feudal lord black ink nest is the lowest rank. How can a subnest be separated from it? Then, whose subnest is the royal lord black ink nests from? The question startled Xiagu. The royal lord black ink nest is already the highest rank. Xianxia frowned. However, according to you, every black ink nest is separated from a higher rank black ink nest. In that case, there should be a source where all the black ink nests come from. What is this source? A dazed Xiagu gazed at Xianxia for a moment before putting on a smile. It beats me, Brother Yang. I have no idea what or where the source is. However, as far as I know, the Royal Lord Black Ink Nest is indeed the highest rank. There isn't a higher rank Black Ink Nest. Perhaps the Royal Lord's Black Ink Nest is the source. Xianxia nodded as he could only acknowledge the statement to be true for now. He decided not to delve into this topic further. Instead, he grew curious about the box in Xiagu's hands. Brother Xiagu, how are you going to hatch it so that it'll become a real black ink nest? Xiagu chuckled. You'll find out soon. As they spoke, they kept moving forward. A few days later, Xiagu suddenly stopped and fished out a universe chart. Universe charts were initially invented by humans. However, as the two races fought against one another for countless years, many of the humans' inventions had been acquired by the Black Ink clan. Some of the examples were flight-type artifacts and universe charts. It's here. Upon determining their exact location, Xiagu became energetic. With this place as the center, a half-day's journey radius will now be considered my fief. Xianxia was stunned. Your fief is pretty vast, then. It had to be noted that Xiagu was a feudal lord, so he could cross quite a distance by flying for half a day. In other words, his fief would be massive. Xiagu chuckled. It's just luck. Then he looked around the area. Initially, the entire Black Ink battlefield was supposed to be a flourishing place. However, due to the Black Ink clan's characteristics, the Black Ink battlefield was only filled with dead universe worlds now. Now, all they could see nearby were universe worlds and universe fragments that were full of death chi. Xiagu soon found a suitable place and flew towards a universe world that was neither small nor big, landing soon after. The entire world was filled with death chi and there wasn't even a tinge of vitality. Xianxia couldn't even feel a bit of world force around here. With that said, he wasn't surprised as this was only to be expected. I'll choose this place then. Xiagu looked around, evidently pleased with this area. As he spoke, he carefully put down the box that he had been carrying in his arms. Although this square box was small, it seemed to be weighty. Xianxia didn't realize it when the box was in Xiagu's arms, but the moment he put it down, the entire ground shook a little. Even the area around the box sunk somewhat. With a solemn expression, Xiagu gazed at the box and said in an equally solemn tone, Brother Yang, don't you want to know how a black ink nest is hatched? You should watch attentively, then. Xianxia nodded gently and stared fixedly at the box. Just then, black ink strength started billowing from Xiagu's hand as he placed his palm on the box. It wasn't certain what he had done, but the box cracked and split. In an instant, a flower bud that was yet to blossom came into Xianxia's sight. This thing was similar to the black ink nests he had seen before, only far, far smaller. However, he could feel extremely rich black ink strength streaming around this immature black ink nest. Just like all the black ink nests he had seen before, this thing was like a living creature. Every time it breathed, black ink strength would billow from it. At this moment, Xiagu's subordinates stepped forward. Although no order was given, they all fell on their knees and pressed their heads against the ground in the black ink nest's direction in a sincere manner. They started chanting something as though they were performing a ritual. Xiagu was evidently agitated. Then, all of a sudden, he stabbed a finger into his chest. Xianxia was stunned at the sight, thinking that Xiagu was trying to kill himself. Nevertheless, he soon realized that it wasn't the case. Although Xiagu had stabbed a finger into his chest, He wasn't trying to end his own life. When he pulled out his hand, there was a drop of black blood on his finger. Black ink clansmen were born in black ink nests, so they had no need for sexual reproduction like humans. With that said, they were not different from the humans when it came to their anatomy. Therefore, the moment Yang Kai saw the black blood, he knew that it was a drop of blood from Jia Gu's heart. It was probably the equivalent of a human's blood essence. If it was lost, it would destabilize the black ink clansman's aura and even cause their strength to plunge. As expected, after Jia Gu extracted a drop of blood from his heart, his aura became noticeably weaker. Then, he dropped the blood onto the black ink nest, which quickly absorbed it. The next moment, a connection was formed between the black ink nest and Jia Gu. Yang Kai watched from the side as he thought that this was similar to how some humans claimed the ownership of some artifacts by dropping their blood onto them. After absorbing Jia Gu's blood, the black ink nest was left with his brand. From now on, this black ink nest was Jia Gu's property, and other black ink clansmen could never snatch it from him, though it wasn't clear how the black ink nest would be impacted upon Jia Gu's death. Yang Kai reckoned that nothing would change though. After all, he had never heard of any incidents where the artifacts would shatter after their owners passed away. There would simply be a new owner after the original owner lost his life. Although Jia Gu's aura had weakened after he finished this, he was clearly high-spirited. He then fished out something from his space ring. Yang Kai could see that it was a world sphere that was filled with world force. He wondered where Jia Gu got it from. Without hesitation, Jia Gu threw the world sphere into the middle of the flower bud. The next instant, the black ink nest started shaking and throbbing like a heart. The world force inside the world sphere was soon swallowed by the black ink nest. As this happened, the entire black ink nest started squirming violently as something that looked like flesh grew out of it. The initially petite black ink nest started expanding rapidly. Just moments later, the originally small black ink nest had expanded by several times, and its growth didn't seem to be stopping anytime soon. Jia Gu continuously threw more world spheres, which were filled with world force, into the black ink nest, which never stopped growing. A few days later, a 1,000-meter-tall feudal lord's black ink nest that occupied a large area was born. Yang Kai was shaken to the core as he watched the entire process. It wasn't until this moment that he figured out how the black ink nests came about. In fact, he was probably the first human to ever witness how a black ink nest was hatched. Perhaps some black ink disciples had seen it in the past, but such information had never been collected by the humans. It's almost done. Jia Gu was pleased as he gazed at the huge black ink nest. His subordinates had been repeatedly performing the same ritual in a sincere manner, and they didn't seem to be stopping anytime soon. Is this its final form? Yang Kai asked. He had seen a lot of black ink nests owned by the feudal lords before, but they were all much larger than this. That was why he was curious. Jia Gu shook his head. This black ink nest can still keep growing, but I don't have a lot of resources with me now. I need to use them for other matters. I'll only be able to keep growing this black ink nest when I have some spare money. I see. Yang Kai bowed his head. Let's take a look inside. Jia Gu was in a jolly mood and he couldn't wait to share his joy with others. Nevertheless, other than his subordinates, Yang Kai was the only black ink disciple there. Hence, he could only invite Yang Kai to go in. Certainly, Yang Kai wouldn't turn him down. In fact, he was curious about what the inside of a black ink nest looked like. Although he had entered Zhu Feng's mid-rank black ink nest before, that one was specifically used for recuperating. Moreover, all his focus was on killing Zhu Feng back then, so he didn't pay attention to anything else at that time. After the black ink nest took shape, it looked like a huge flower bud sitting on the ground. Over the past few days when the black ink nest was growing, Yang Kai could clearly feel that a profound force seemed to have expanded from beneath the black ink nest and turned into roots, which connected the black ink nest to this universe world. Jia Gu didn't seem to have made a move, but the moment he stood in front of the black ink nest, a gap appeared at the bottom and revealed a dark passageway. He had used a drop of blood from his heart to refine this black ink nest, so as he was now connected to it, he could easily control it. After Jia Gu stepped inside, Yang Kai followed him closely. They walked across the long passageway and arrived at an empty room. Yang Kai could see that the walls of this room seemed to be made from flesh. The entire black ink nest was filled with black ink strength and an indescribably evil aura. Xiaogu said, "With this black ink nest, it will be easier for me to cultivate. There even a chance for me to ascend to become a territory lord. I'll congratulate you in advance then, Brother Xiaogu." Yang Kai cupped his fist, then asked curiously, "I saw you using up a lot of world spheres earlier, so it requires the world force to hatch a black ink nest?" Xiaogu replied with a smile, "Yes, it requires the world for to hatch a black ink nest. Of course, cultivation resources used by humans would work as well. Let me put it this way, a black ink nest can absorb anything that contains energy and transform it into black ink strength." Upon hearing his explanation, Yang Kai thought that it was no wonder wherever the black ink clansmen went, the universe worlds would be filled with death chi. The Black Ink clan was the natural enemy of the 3,000 worlds. If they were allowed to invade the 3,000 worlds, all life would be purged. Since time immemorial, the masters of every generation from the cave heavens and paradises had been trying to destroy the Black Ink clan on the Black Ink battlefield to stop them from threatening the 3,000 worlds. For this reason, countless people lost their lives. However, other than the cultivators from the cave heavens and paradises, there was barely anyone in the entire 3,000 worlds who was aware of what was going on. It was a tragedy for all these sacrifices to be made yet never recognized.